Chapter 1177. At this moment, Gu Han started to miss Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao. Right now, Jun Moxie had disappeared at such a crucial time, missing the summit meeting between the two races. Naturally, he didn't have the chance to know about this prophecy from 10,000 years ago, as well as the strange race's explanation. Speaking of which, this was actually within reason. After a few days, the eldest young master was truly exhausted. That was a lightning tribulation, and it was a large-scale lightning tribulation that lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, Even if they had strange techniques that could perfectly deal with the lightning tribulation, they still needed to be on full alert, not daring to make any sudden movements. If they made any careless mistakes, like missing 1 or 2 lightning tribulations, it might result in a large number of casualties. After spending so much effort for 3 whole days, now that they were free, they should hurry and find a place to rest. But just now, if Jun Moxie had been present when Sasho Kitajima came, what would he have done? With that brat's sharp tongue and vengeful personality, he would definitely not let this strange race's person get away with it, right? At the very least, he wouldn't let him leave so easily. Gu Han believed that with Jun Moxie's shocking strength and venomous tongue, even if he couldn't beat this strange race's person until he vomited blood and fled, he would at least be able to make him vomit blood and run away in anger. In any case, he would be able to make him vomit blood no matter what. Thinking of this, Gu Han couldn't help but smile slightly. His mood that had sunk to the bottom of the valley earlier also recovered slightly. Jun Moxie had always been an existence that could bring about miracles. Right now, at least right now, we are on the same side. I sincerely hope that he can bring about another miracle and get us out of this nightmare that we can't escape from. The moment Sasho Kitajima left, Mei Xueyan, who had also sensed it, knew that the strange race's next move was very likely to arrive soon. So, she tightened her guard even more. After Jun Moxie spared no expense to help his side greatly increase their manpower, the strength of the Tian Fa Forest and Evil Monarch Manor had completely reached a high level. His standard was ridiculously high. Due to the limitations of one's aptitude and cultivation level, there were less than 20 people who had barely reached the Holy Venerate level. As for the strength of a Saint Monarch, only Mei Xueyan had reached it. But she had broken through to the 2nd level in one go, and was not too far off from the 3rd level Saint Monarch Gu Han. And the most precious thing was that in these 10,000 years, none of the Xian beasts of Tian Fa had reached the level of a Saint Monarch. But Mei Xueyan was truly the only one in the history of the Xian beasts. These were the top combat powers. Although it was shocking, it was not shocking enough. What was truly unbelievable was the number of people with high combat power. All the Tian Fa ferocious beasts and the people from the Evil Monarch Manor had all risen to the Holy Emperor realm. There was no almost, it was all. There were no exceptions, it was all. Even the 2 Tian Can DK and Tian Can Xian cultivators, who had the lowest Xian cultivation, had also climbed to the Holy Emperor realm. Not only had they climbed to the Holy Emperor realm, they had also relied on their indomitable willpower and reborn talent to reach the 3rd level of the Holy Emperor realm in one go. This kind of crossing speed could be said to be unparalleled since ancient times. Of course, the 2 of them had paid a huge price for such a shocking improvement. After all, they were not like Jun Moxie, who had countless backup plans. During the process of their improvement, Mei Xueyan had always been sitting by their side, using her art of unlocking Heaven's Fortune's unique spiritual chi to continuously expand their meridians and repair their damaged bodies. Even so, the 2 of them were still hovering on the edge of life and death several times, facing the outcome of their bodies exploding if they couldn't hold on any longer. In this way, although their improvement was extremely terrifying, it also left behind a considerable side effect. That was, their meridians were completely saturated and solidified after this improvement. Before their realm and comprehension reached the same level as their cultivation, there was no chance for them to improve anymore. This was a long process that required a considerable amount of luck. However, this was the true strength of a third-level Saint Emperor. It could be said that it was a realm that the two of them, or perhaps more than 99% of the people in this world, could only dream of reaching. It was like reaching the heavens in a single step. What was truly commendable was that even after obtaining such a shocking increase in strength, the two of them still remained expressionless. Other than the occasional flash of excitement in their eyes, there was no other change in their expressions. Furthermore, they still spent most of their free time practicing martial arts and training their own realms. They strived to synchronize their reactions with their current strength as soon as possible. This kind of transcendent state of mind was something that even Xian beasts that had lived for hundreds of years could not compare to. Just like what Jun Mo Xie had seen with a single glance back then, indifferent to favor or humiliation, his expression would not change even if a mountain collapsed in front of him. His will would not waver even if he faced life and death. He was born to be an ultimate assassin. Half a day after Sasho Kitajima retreated, Bailey Luo Yun and Leng Ao, the two newly ascended Saint Venerables, bid farewell to Mei Xuan. Then, they brought along the assassin team that they belonged to and disappeared into the vast forest without a trace. They were looking for the best assassination spot to prepare for the upcoming battle. After obtaining Mei Xuan's permission, Solitary Eagle and Feng Wan Yun led the 300 Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer team and advanced 800 miles forward. They laid in ambush amidst the rubble of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. As a hidden sword, it could be of great use at any time. At the same time, Solitary Eagle and Feng Wan Yun had another thought. The entire battle was under Jun Moxie's personal command. The prestige of the evil monarch of this generation could not be tarnished by them. Whether it was the Tian Fa beasts or the assassin team from the evil monarch manor, only the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer team was the original strength of the Jun family that belonged to Jun Moxie. So, these soldiers that belonged to the Jun family should be used in the most dangerous place. Compared to the brothers of Tian Fa, even if they had to die, it would be their own people who died first. The people of the evil monarch manor would die first, and they would definitely not let their own brothers become cannon fodder for them. Jun Moxie was not here now, but both of them believed that even if Jun Moxie was here, he would also make the same choice without any hesitation. On the battlefield, comrades, this was the kind of sincerity that needed to be sacrificed. Only when you were already prepared to take the bullet for your comrades, then your comrades would be willing to sacrifice themselves to save you. If you were selfish in battle and only cared about your own life, then the one who would die the fastest would definitely be you. It was destined to be you. Because everyone would feel that it was not worth it to sacrifice their own lives to save someone like you. Battle strength could only be fully condensed when one's life and death were entrusted to each other, and when one's hearts were united. And the choice made by Solitary Eagle and Feng Wan Yun at this moment was the final condensation of the entire team's battle strength before the battle. Mei Xuan understood their thoughts. Although she was also worried, she did not stop them. At this moment, no matter who it was, they might have to face sacrifice, so they had to consider the bigger picture. But even if there was a need to sacrifice, it depended on whose sacrifice it was, and what kind of sacrifice was more valuable. This value was not only reflected in the number of enemies killed, but more importantly, how much it could motivate one's own troops. And the direct descendants of the evil monarch manor were undoubtedly the most suitable choice on this point. Therefore, after Mei Shui Yen Shui had agreed to Solitary Falcon's request, the Tiger King, Earthcracker, who had been standing beside her, had requested to lead 3,000 elite members of his Tiger clan as the second echelon. Mei Shuiyan agreed to Tiger King's request. Her face was as calm as still water, but her heart was in turmoil. With her intelligence, How could she not understand that solitary eagle and Feng Wanyun had chosen the most likely position to be sacrificed for Tian Fa, for the sake of the unity of all their forces? And Tiger King's request this time was similarly simple. Even if he and these 3,000 Tiger Tribe brothers all self-destructed and died, he still wanted to ensure that Solitary Eagle and the rest of the evil Monarch Manor's brothers returned safely as much as possible. You can disregard your life and death for me, I can disregard everything for you. Although you're from the evil Monarch Manor, and I'm from Tian Fa, I'm a Xian beast and you're a human. But at this moment, we're just brothers who will go through life and death together. My back can be trusted to the other party. And the other beast kings of Tian Fa also made use of all the time they had, instructing their subordinates to train as much as they could, allowing their reaction speed to match the sudden increase in their cultivation. Crane King would order a batch of flying Xian beasts under him to take off and land after every incense stick's worth of time, keeping a close watch on that long line of defense. There were also large numbers of flying Xian beasts in a state where they could take off at any moment. On its back, there were even Tian Fa warriors with the backs of tigers and waists of bears already seated. With just a command, they would be able to take off and rush to their destination in less than a blink of an eye. Under Gu Han's lead, the people from the 3 Holy Lands maintained their composure and rested their spirits. The moment something happened, Gu Han's request was, "We must not let Tian Fa look down on the people of the Holy Lands. Even if everyone dies this time, we must defend the dignity of the Holy Lands. Or perhaps this is the last time we defend the dignity of the Holy Lands." It was that last sentence that completely ignited the determination of the experts of the Holy Lands to fight to the death. The entire place was heavy. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly heavy, and swords were drawn. Everyone was preparing for battle with all their might. Especially when Bear Mountain had once said tearfully, before Little Eagle died in battle, he had seriously mentioned to me the weakness of the strange race's concealment techniques. It seemed to be disadvantageous to a chaotic battle. Once they are in a state of concealment, the strange race's defense will be at its lowest. I must definitely inform Big Sister and brother-in-law of this discovery. Chapter 1178. Mei Shuiyan was currently frowning as she paced back and forth, thinking about how to make good use of this weakness. One thing was for sure, if this weakness could be used well, it would definitely be able to deal a heavy blow to the strange race's experts who could conceal themselves. It could even be a devastating blow. If the tactics were successful, and the results were ideal, it would be enough to make them not dare to use stealth tactics in future battles. And as long as they did not use those damned stealth techniques, what would the soldiers of the Xian Empire have to fear? In previous battles, the most troublesome ones were those perverted fellows who would mysteriously disappear at the drop of a hat. And the reason why the Xian Empire suffered the most casualties was because of those fellows who would disappear at the drop of a hat. But she frowned and thought for a long time. Although she had this weakness that could be used, she still could not think of a practical way to take action. Just as Mei Shuiyan was deep in thought, Jun Dashao suddenly appeared. The current Jun Moxie seemed to have something on him. As for what it was exactly, Mei Shuiyan couldn't explain it no matter how hard she tried. She could only vaguely feel that Jun Mo Xie seemed to be different from before. Very different. In fact, Jun Moxie also had this strange feeling. After absorbing the lightning tribulation, Jun Moxie immediately returned to the Hongjun Pagoda to regulate his breathing. At the same time, he shouted a few times to vent his frustration and awkwardness. To his surprise, he found that the Hongjun Pagoda seemed to be different from before. It was as if a certain part of it was rippling, but it had not reached a certain critical point. Jun Mo Xie was also flabbergasted by this strange change, and he was filled with questions. At the same time, Jun Dashao also felt that his cultivation level had loosened. It seemed like it was a sign of a breakthrough. The reason was not difficult to imagine. These changes must have occurred because the Hongjun Pagoda had absorbed so much of the lightning energy, and this had led to these changes. Although the feeling was strange, it was developing in a good direction. Could it be that absorbing a large amount of lightning energy could actually help him speed up his breakthrough and increase his strength? Junemosia was also a little unsure about this point. In fact, he couldn't figure it out. It was for this reason that he had spent a lot of time in the Hongjun Pagoda to study this matter. However, he didn't expect that in such a short period of time, not only did he not figure out what was going on, but he also became more and more confused. Moreover, he even missed the number one expert of the strange races. He had missed the summit dialogue between the three major powers. Jun Dashao stomped his feet and pounded his chest. He was truly regretful. If he was here just now, he wouldn't have let that guy leave just like that. No matter what, he would have at least given him a real beating. Jun Dashao heaved a long sigh, deeply regretting that he had missed such a heaven-sent opportunity. The other party had already made it clear that he was going to be messed with, and he had actually missed such an opportunity. Of course, if he really wanted to beat him, Jun Dashao would only use the blood of Yellow Flame to beat him. He definitely wouldn't use that, a heartfelt sigh and an inexplicable sense of loss caused Mei Shuiyan's brows to furrow. She almost wanted to give this fellow a death sentence on the spot. This was the godly technique that all women learned on their own. It could be said to be the most painful for men. Only now did Jun Dashao realize that Mei Shuiyan seemed to have a lot on her mind. He hurriedly asked about it. Mei Shuiyan furrowed her brows as she recounted the matter. Jun Moxie's face instantly turned solemn. If he could make good use of it, it would undoubtedly be a powerful weapon. Although Eagle King had successfully discovered this weakness, he was lacking in manpower at that time. Secondly, he was lacking in adaptability. Thirdly, the situation at that time was a little too chaotic. It was impossible for him to use any effective method. As for Bear King, if he could think of a way, he wouldn't be Bear King. This is the plan that Little Eagle left for us before he died. This is a great weapon against the strange races. We must not neglect it. This plan might even be a way to turn the tables against the strange races. Mei Shuiyan bit her lips and said resolutely. Her own brother had sacrificed his life in exchange for this information. In Mei Shuiyan's heart, it was naturally extremely important. I know. I understand the importance of this information. Jun Moxie muttered to himself as he paced back and forth, his brows furrowed in deep thought. His mind flashed through all the battle examples he had seen in his previous life. He secretly compared them one by one. He then recalled the experience he had gained from fighting with the ninjas in his previous life. It seemed that there was already a path in front of him. However, when he looked at it, it was blurry and he couldn't see it clearly. He couldn't tell the exact reason. Under what circumstances would the strange races send out a large number of experts to participate in the battle? Jun Moxie muttered to himself as he asked this question. A situation that would cause the strange races to send out a large number of enduring ghosts, enduring earths and enduring heavens experts. Unless the battle had reached a critical juncture where life and death would be decided. Only then would they send out all their experts to break through with all their might in order to win the battle. Perhaps only then would the strange races really send out a large number of experts that could turn the tides of the battle. Mei Shuiyan frowned as she said. But if that really happens, I'm afraid that our battle strength would be reduced by 70 to 80%. Even though everyone's strength has increased, in terms of numbers, we are still at an absolute disadvantage. The enemy's number of people could be 30 times, 50 times or even 100 times more than ours. If the enemy uses a human wave attack, we will definitely be in a state of exhaustion. Even if we manage to hold on, how are we going to deal with the later battles? There is always a limit to human strength. Jun Moxie's brows furrowed even tighter. That's right. This is indeed a difficult point to grasp. If we don't grasp it well, we might end up making a fool of ourselves and allow the strange races to charge in. That would be a real disaster. Mei Shuyan frowned deeply. She knew that the strange races had a fatal weakness that they could exploit, but she couldn't think of a way to deal with it. This kind of feeling was really driving her crazy. I believe that at the beginning of the battle, the enemy might not send out many experts. Even if there are enduring earths and enduring heavens, there won't be too many of them. June Moxie said calmly, so, at the beginning of the battle, as long as everyone is careful, I believe that under the invisible attacks of the strange races, there won't be too many losses. So, in normal battles, we can't use this point. Yes. Mei Shuyan's eyes revealed a heartfelt pain. No matter which battle it is, there will always be casualties. As for the final battle, June Moxie's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Suddenly, he clapped his hands and said, I got it. We can do this. How can we do this? Mei Shuyan's spirits rose. She didn't blame June Moxie for speaking incoherently. This way we can gather all the Saint Venerables on our side, and at the right time, we can enter the front line of the battlefield. Then, we can lock onto the enemy's experts. We don't need to lock onto them completely, everyone only needs to remember a few faces. As long as they notice that those people have suddenly disappeared, it means that the strange races have sent out their experts, and many of them have used their invisible techniques to kill their way over. This shouldn't be wrong, right? June Moxie smiled. Indeed. As long as many of the enemy's experts disappear at the same time, they will naturally be charging over. Is there even a need to say it? Mei Shuyan was a little confused. What's the hurry? Listen to what I have to say. Our team will now be divided into 4 groups. The first group will focus on defending ourselves and withstanding the enemy's attacks. Then, the second group will begin to attack the area in front of the first group and within a radius of 30 feet above them. The third group will then attack the area in a radius of 60 feet above the first and second group. They will then attack the area in a radius of 60 feet above the first and second group. Finally, the fourth group will attack an area of 10 zhang, using a dense and indiscriminate attack. As June Moxie spoke, he took out a stone and drew out the attack that he had just explained on the ground. That's it. After the last 3 waves of attack, all of us will immediately charge into the strange race's main army. We'll make use of the strategy of mixing the enemy and our allies, so that those invisible bastards won't be able to do anything. I estimate that after these 3 waves of attack, at least half of the strange race's experts will be killed. June Moxie threw the stone aside and said, This is the best solution, and also the stupidest solution. But if we cooperate well, it is also the most effective strategy. Mei Shuyan squatted down and carefully looked at the attack that June Moxie had drawn out. She thought for a while and said, That's right. As of now, this is the only effective method we can think of to kill a large number of the strange race's experts. Remember, the key to this plan is the reversal pill. June Moxie's eyes flashed. All of the soldiers, if they are injured, do not take it. We must hold on until the enemy sees that we are at the end of the road and sends out a large number of experts. Then, we will all take the reversal pill. Only then can we follow my plan and deal the most severe blow to the enemy. Yes. Mei Shuyan frowned and said, But if we do that, there will be sacrifices. June Moxie said solemnly, Or, this is the price we will have to pay. Mei Shuyan let out a long sigh. She felt as if her heart was blocked by something, and it was very uncomfortable. That's the only way. June Moxie raised his head and thought over the plan once more. He sighed deeply and said resolutely, Now is not the time to be soft-hearted. I also want my brothers to return safe and sound. But this is obviously impossible. There is one more thing we can use. Mei Shuyan's eyes flashed as she said. Chapter 1179. This is the all-seeing Rakshasa, Qiao Ying. Mei Shuiyan pointed at the diagram drawn by Jun Moxie and said, "Our attack is only a rough plan, and we can only rely on our own estimation. Although the plan is good, the battlefield is constantly changing, and we may not be able to execute this strategy smoothly. But if Qiao Ying is here, the situation will be very different, because she is the one who can clearly see the enemy's movements. If she is in command at the right time, the success rate of executing this strategy will be greatly increased." "That's right." Jun Moxie slapped his thigh and said, "How could I forget about the all-seeing Rakshasa? Isn't she the only one who can see through the strange race's abnormal technique? At that time, even Jun Moxie couldn't help but think of himself that day. Wasn't the yin-yang escape, which had never failed, also recorded by this expert's all-seeing eye? Then, he thought of Qiao Ying's graceful figure, her exquisite features, and her mature and charming expression. Suddenly, young Master Jun's heart skipped a beat, and a thought popped up in his mind. "If I can touch her, I wonder how happy that would be." Mei Shuiyan was originally happy that she had solved a problem that had been bothering her for a few days, but when she looked up, she found that Jun Dashao seemed to have fallen into a lecherous state. She had just finished talking about Qiao Ying, and this guy actually looked like he wasn't satisfied. This was too obvious. What else was there to say? Mei Shuiyan was instantly filled with jealousy, and she used the two-finger Zen technique again. 2 fingers fiercely pinched his waist, and immediately exerted force, turning him 180 degrees clockwise, and then continued to move 360 degrees. She gritted her teeth and asked word by word, "What are you thinking about?" "I was thinking." "Aya!" Jun Moxie cried out in pain. This girl actually used the tyrannical strength of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to pinch him. They were of the same origin, so the amount of damage they could inflict was considerable. In addition, the effect of "man hurts the most" had caused Jun Moxie to feel a piercing pain in his heart. His mouth was like a snowy snow, and he was almost unable to speak. In the end, Mei Shuiyan couldn't bear it anymore. She relaxed a little and said, "Humph, I just mentioned Qiao Ying and you're acting like a lecher. You already have so many sisters at home, why are you still letting your imagination run wild? Did he have some other ideas? Are you planning to take in another room?" "Shuiyan, no matter what happens, you have to be reasonable, right?" When Jun Dashao saw that the situation was not good, he quickly came up with a countermeasure. His mind flashed like lightning, and he came up with the perfect countermeasure. "Aya? You think you're reasonable? Don't you know what Jun Dashao's principles are? I'm here to listen to your teachings." Beauty May's words were polite, but her originally loosened fingers exerted force again, and continued to create "men hurt the most." Of course you have to listen to my teachings. Aren't you the one who started it? You definitely don't want me to think, but that's still okay. Young Master Jun gritted his teeth and said, "I'm a man who can't be any more normal. How can I not think about such important matters of human relations? If I don't think about it, then it'll be a big matter, right? If I'm like you, reverting to your original form at the crucial moment, refusing to cooperate with you and running away, I won't even be able to find a place to cry. If it happens a few more times, I'm afraid I'll become a eunuch. I won't even need to be a man anymore. I'll directly enter the palace to serve the emperor." "And you're still angry with me?" Mei Shuiyan felt a little guilty, and her eyes were evasive as she said, "I didn't want to. That time I wasn't prepared. That was too powerful, how could I endure it?" "Then, when will you be ready? Are you ready now?" "Don't worry, I'll be very gentle, really very gentle," Jun Moxie asked excitedly. He had long forgotten about what men hurt the most, and Jun Dashao purposely brought up this topic at this moment, not only to resolve the awkward situation, but also to force Beauty May to express her opinion. He couldn't possibly continue like this, could he? Every time there was a critical moment she would transform. It didn't need to be too much. If it happened 1 or 2 more times, June Dashao felt that he would definitely be impotent by this girl. People say that a bachelor's life depends on steel spears. A raw cowhide can also be pierced through 3 sheets. It seemed that he was almost the same at that time. He even pierced through the bedding. Other people were bachelors for a lifetime, but he had lived 2 lifetimes. That? How do you prepare for that kind of thing? How can you be so gentle? Mei Shuyan's face turned red. She was a little bashful. So you mean, I'm not ready? June Moxie almost vomited blood. Give me some time. Slowly. Mei Shuyan covered her face, and her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. June First Dashao banged his head on the ground, stamped his feet and pounded his chest. He suddenly wanted to bang his head against the wall. My dear, please have pity on me. If I hold it in any longer, I'll be able to form a sarira. What? Sarira? What's a sarira? Mei Shuyan scoffed and asked curiously. A sarira is, if a man can't release that life essence for a long time, then it will form a big rock there. In the future, he won't be able to release it anymore. June Moxie made up a story and rolled his eyes. Speaking of which, this sarira was really hard to explain in this world. Because in this world, there were no monks form into a rock? Is it really that scary? Mei Shuyan was shocked, and her big round eyes widened. Yes, yes. How could it not be? The matter that I just mentioned is like an arrow on a bowstring. It's imminent and it's hanging by a thread. Ah! June Moxie said mournfully. Humph, don't you still have Miao Xiao Miao, Guanqing Han and the others? Recently you also have Xiaoi. No matter what, it's enough for you to torment. You won't form that. Sarira. Do you really think I'm stupid? Mei Shuyan pouted and turned around. How can they be compared to you? June Moxie was anxious and started to ramble incoherently. The one I want to do the most is Yua, Pei Pei. What are you saying? Mei Shuyan was really embarrassed this time. She stomped her feet with a red face and ran away, covering her face. She only left a sentence behind. Why aren't you going to the Holy Lands to ask Xiao Ying to come over? June Dashao let out a long sigh, as if he had lost his soul. Seeing June Moxie walking towards him with a gloomy face, Gu Han hurriedly stood up to welcome him. Gu Han could see the current situation very clearly. If they wanted to stop the strange races from invading the Xian continent, the only possibility was June Moxie. As for the 3 Holy Lands, there was no hope for them anymore. Looking at the scattered 6,000 to 7,000 people on his side, this was the final result of the 3 Holy Lands sending out all their forces. Although those who could come here were all experts, but compared to June Moxie's evil Monarch Manor or Tian Fa, they were definitely not on the same level. Manor Lord June. Gu Han smiled and stepped forward to welcome June Moxie. June Moxie did not beat around the bush and said directly, Senior Gu, this sect is here to borrow someone from you. Gu Han's heart skipped a beat, but he was not too surprised. Xiao Ying. That's right. It's Xiao Ying. June Moxie said. No problem. Gu Han didn't even blink as he agreed to it straightforwardly. Following that, he called Xiao Ying out from the queue. Looking at the confused Xiao Ying, a trace of affection flashed in Gu Han's eyes. Xiao Ying, you will follow Manor Lord June to deal with the strange races in the future. Why is that? Why must I be sent out alone before the big battle? Xiao Ying was clearly unhappy. Although the Holy Lands had already declined, Xiao Ying still had deep feelings for the Heaven Saint Palace. Xiao Ying, the situation is very clear now. You can only better display your usefulness by being at Tian Fa's side to fight against the strange races. Right now, the Holy Lands are no longer able to give you the space to fully display your abilities. This is the truth, the reality. Gu Han was indeed the #1 person in the Heaven Saint Palace. The moment June Moxie mentioned borrowing Xiao Ying, he had already guessed that June Moxie must have some specific plan in mind. Xiao Ying stood there alone, suddenly feeling an unprecedented loneliness in this moment. In that moment, she was at a loss of what to do. Although the two camps were set up very close, Xiao Ying could vaguely sense that this departure of hers would most likely be the final farewell before the big battle. This indescribable ominous feeling caused her heart to be in a mess, and she was completely at a loss as to what to do. Xiao Ying, you go over first and look for Venerable Mei. Gu Han waved his hands, a trace of reluctance in his eyes as he continued. I'll have a few more words with Manor Lord Jun. Xiao Ying nodded and looked deeply at the many companions she had spent time with in the Heaven Saint Palace. Tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. Turning around, she covered her face with her hands and ran out. Mei Shuyan went to welcome her from afar. The people from the Heaven Saint Palace, like Qing Yin Xiao and Chu Wu Hui, were all smiling as they looked at Xiao Ying's receding figure, their eyes filled with warmth. Towards this little sister who had accompanied them for over 1,000 years, all of them doted on her from the bottom of their hearts. This departure would most likely be an eternal farewell. With her unique position, she should be much safer in Tian Fa's camp. At least, it would be safer than staying by our side. Because we've already, as Gu Han watched Xiao Ying being led into the camp by Mei Shuyan personally, he seemed to have let go of a burden in his heart and heaved a long sigh of relief. Turning to Jun Moxie, he said, Manor Lord Jun, this old man has a few words that I wish to speak with you about. Senior Gu, please speak. Jun Moxie stretched out his hand. Gu Han waved his hand, and a misty aura enveloped the entire space. After a slight tremor, the air became motionless. With a wave of Gu Han's hand, he had already sealed off the space within a 10-zhang radius. This way, he could ensure that no one would be able to hear their conversation. Chapter 1180. After Gu Han finished setting up, he turned around and looked at Jun Moxie. His expression was complicated, and his eyes were complicated. There seemed to be some kind of intense hope, and also a deep sense of pleading. And it was this kind of gaze that made even a stone-hearted person like Jun Moxie's heart tremble. This old man has lived for 2 lifetimes. In total, I have lived for more than 5,000 years. Gu Han laughed bitterly. In my previous life, this old man's cultivation stopped at the peak of the Saint Venerable realm. I was unable to pass the heavenly tribulation. Left with no other choice, I dismembered myself under the heavenly tribulation and used my holy infant to reincarnate. I found a Xian Qi aristocratic family with the surname Gu, and merged with a pregnant woman who was about to give birth. Until today, I can be considered to have reached the peak of the 3rd level of the Saint Monarch realm. My parents of the Gu family have shown me great kindness. So, the past Wu Shanyun has already disappeared. This old man is called Gu Han in this life. Only Gu Han. Gu Han's face revealed a look of reminiscence. As if thinking of his loving parents back then, he couldn't help but sigh softly. Jun Moxie nodded. Then, he frowned and asked, I won't hide it from Senior Gu. This junior has something that I don't understand. Please speak. Gu Han said gently. When I first met Senior Gu in the Heaven Saint Palace, Senior was in the starry sky, and there was the universe in your eyes. At that time, Senior's cultivation seemed to be much higher than it is now. Jun Moxie said, but I don't know why Senior's cultivation fell to such a level? Jun Moxie remembered very clearly that when he and Gu Han looked at each other, he was almost completely lost in the starry sky domain in the other party's eyes. And at that time Gu Han's every movement had a kind of mystical rhythm. It was as if he had already faintly conformed with the heavenly Tao. That was a profound cultivation that could be said to be earth-shattering. Although the current Gu Han was still someone that no one could underestimate, he had lost that kind of mystical and transcendent state. The difference in their realms was simply incalculable, and it wouldn't be wrong to say that they were 2 different people. So you've noticed it too. Gu Han chuckled before saying in a slightly desolate tone, "Now that we are working together sincerely, my situation is not much of a secret, so I'll tell you all about it. On that day, I had already reached the peak of the 4th level of the Saint Monarch realm. I was only a step away from the half-saint realm. In other words, the same realm that Zhan Kuang had reached. Therefore, during that period of time, he did not care about anything else. The only thing on his mind was to break through as soon as possible. He didn't deliberately make things difficult for you when you visited. In fact, he didn't even say anything when you practically ransacked the Heaven Saint Palace. That's because as long as I can break through that barrier, nothing else will be an obstacle to me. June Moxie, do you know what that kind of breakthrough is called?" Gu Han asked with a smile. "What's it called?" June Moxie asked with interest. "Return to simplicity, become a man out of nothingness, the body of a half-saint, the soul of an endless. If you want to ascend to heaven, you must first be a man. That is, a saint." Gu Han's expression was solemn as he slowly recited these words. His expression was filled with sincerity. "If you want to ascend to heaven, you must first be a man," June Moxie muttered. He seemed to have understood something. "That's right, the most important point is this," Gu Han said seriously. "You must remember it well. It will definitely be beneficial to your future advancement. This is the greatest comprehension I've had in my 2 lives. Whether it's good or bad, you must remember it no matter what. You are a man. A man. You must be the source, a pure, human. That's right. In this world, there are too few people who can be called human," June Moxie said slowly as he pondered. "Actually, no matter what you do, if you want to do it well, you must first be a man. If you don't even have the qualifications to be a man, how can you talk about doing anything else?" "That's right. That's right." Gu Han's face revealed a look of admiration. He was sincerely happy that June Moxie could comprehend it so quickly. The heavens are watching what a man does. Or perhaps the 3 Holy Lands have really gone overboard these few years. This old man has been too focused on his own interests, resulting in some problems with this character of mine. Just when this old man felt that everything was ready and was preparing to charge through that barrier, Zhan Luanhun returned. Only Zhan Kuang came to Mount Heaven Saint. Gu Han gritted his teeth as he said this. June Moxie suddenly realized that Gu Han's decline in cultivation had a lot to do with Zhan Luanhun. The 9 illusory quicksand was stolen, and the formation collapsed instantly. Following that, the entire pillar of Heaven's mountains collapsed. This old man's spirit was severely injured at that time. The corner of Gu Han's eyes twitched. This old man was originally charging forward without any distractions. My mind was in a mess, and at that moment, I was unable to restrain my mind from slipping. Instantly, my cultivation fell by 1.5 levels, all the way to the peak of the 3rd level of Saint Monarch before it finally stopped. As the saying goes, sailing against the current, if you don't advance, you will fall back. The fact that you didn't go berserk and become a cripple at that critical moment and suffered such a shocking disturbance is already a testament to the strength of your mind. June Moxie sighed, finally understanding where the problem was. No wonder the feeling of seeing Gu Han this time was completely different from the last time. That's all for now. June Moxie, this old man wants to talk to you about serious matters. Gu Han's expression turned serious. He looked at June Moxie's face and said slowly, "This old man has a few requests. I hope that Manor Lord June will agree to them. Please speak." June Moxie also turned serious. "As long as it's within my capabilities, I will definitely do it. This old man's greatest wish in this life is nothing more than to step into the realm of a saint. Then break through the restrictions of this world, roam the skies, and roam the universe freely," Gu Han said slowly. "But now, all these hopes have all turned into bubbles and no longer have any meaning. Right now, this old man's only wish is to completely eradicate the strange races. This is something that the three Holy Lands are definitely unable to do. Guhan looked at June Moxie. This, I can only trouble you. I know that I don't have the qualifications to say this, but the countless lives on this continent are all in Manor Lord June's hands. Please. Senior is a little too pessimistic. It's not to that extent yet, right? June Moxie said lightly. No. I'm the same as you, I've already seen it clearly. The three Holy Lands are already doomed. Guhan closed his eyes. After this battle, the three Holy Lands will no longer exist in this world. As for the aftermath, everything, we can only rely on you, June Moxie. June Moxie was shocked and raised his head to look at Guhan. A calm smile appeared on Guhan's face as he said lightly, "This battle, no matter the final outcome, the three Holy Lands, this once glorious name, will be erased from this world. We have already decided to use our lives to protect the common people of this continent." As he said that, he smiled lightly and said, "That day, you once said that whoever mentions the words common people of the world in front of you again, that person will have to die. I hope that today this old man can say it for the last time." June Moxie only felt as if his heart was being tossed and turned violently. As long as one was a person, they would always have a goal. Protecting the common people of the world, protecting the safety of the continent. Perhaps this was the belief that the three Holy Lands had upheld for the past 10,000 years. This was indeed a supreme glory. It was precisely for this glory that they had done too many wrong things. Among them, there were even many irreversible consequences. But similarly, for this glory, they had passed it down generation after generation without any complaints or regrets in a place far away from human habitation. The sacrifices they had made could not be said to be small. All for an illusory glory that not many people knew about. Right now, this glory had finally been cruelly shattered by June Moxie. Facing the increasingly powerful strange races, they still chose to step forward bravely and face the danger with their own bodies, preparing to use their lives to wash away the mistakes of these 10,000 years. Lamentable, but also respectable. We have already decided that in this battle, everyone from the three Holy Lands will be sacrificed. Guhan seemed to be talking about a small matter that was not even worth mentioning. After we die, no matter what happens to this continent, no matter what happens to the common people, we are destined to not have the chance to see it. When that time comes, everything else will be your problem. I do not dare to hope that Manor Lord June will take care of the common people of the world, but I still have one request from Manor Lord June. If it is possible, please kill all the strange races. June Moxie smiled bitterly. This old man Gu really thought too highly of him. To be honest, I do not know why, but I always have a strange intuition. That is, you have an unimaginable hatred for the strange races. Guhan furrowed his brows and suddenly smiled strangely. Otherwise, after the matter with Xia Chong Tian, with your temper, you should have immediately retreated after killing Xia Chong Tian and the rest, not bothering about the matters here anymore. Even if the Xian continent was completely enslaved by the strange races, you would not have stood out. I believe that with your character, you are definitely capable of doing that. But you chose to stay in the end. I believe that your motive for staying is not for the sake of the world, for the common people, or for the glory of Tian Fa. Then, I am very curious, why do you hate the strange races so much? It really makes me curious. Guhan asked with interest. They are very disgusting, aren't they? Is this reason enough? June Moxie smiled wryly, but declined to comment. Why do I hate the strange races? As a typical nationalistic youth, this question was too easy to answer. But in this world, it was impossible to explain. How am I supposed to explain? It doesn't seem to make sense no matter how I explain it. Could it be that I am venting my anger on them because these disgusting strange races remind me of a certain despicable and shameless race? A certain race whose entire country, from the old to the young, was still unable to vent their hatred even if they were to be executed 100,000 times? Could it be that I'm doing this because of the countless heinous crimes committed by the Japanese army during the 8 years of war? Could it be that I'm doing this because of the 300,000 innocent souls of the Nanjing massacre? There's no way to say it, there's no way to say it, I can only kill. Kill until the heavens and earth are turned upside down. Who knows, in my previous life, I only hated myself for being born 70 years too late. Chapter 1181. Disgusting? Gu Han was taken aback, then he laughed loudly in agreement. This is a very good reason. They are indeed disgusting. Just this bit of reason is enough to exterminate them. As a saint monarch, Gu Han was naturally not a fool. With his thousands of years of wisdom and experience, how could he not see through Jun Moxi's insincerity? But no matter what, the reason was only secondary. Right now, Jun Moxi's undisguised hatred and killing intent towards the strange races was the most important. From now on, if there is really no more threat of the strange races, and there is no more 3 Holy Lands, leaving only the evil monarch manor and Tian Fa, you will need to be cautious. Gu Han's words sounded like he was leaving behind some funeral arrangements. Jun Moxi, do not think that only humans can do evil. Do not think that only bad people can do evil in this world. Once a good person does evil, then the evil he does will be so great that even the bad people can't catch up to it. Please remember this old man's words. That makes sense. It can be said to be the truth. Jun Moxi sighed from the bottom of his heart. When a bad person does evil things, at least he himself will know that what he's doing is not a good thing, and he will have many reservations in his heart. But if a good person does a bad thing as a good thing, then the influence will be huge. Because in his heart this matter is right, it is just. It is glorious. With this kind of thinking, he has no reservations at all. He can use any methods and do his best to perfect the plan, doing everything possible to make this matter happen. And the people around him, out of their trust in this good person, would help him unconditionally, blindly, and help him. At that time, the level of destruction that would be caused was truly something that no one could predict. Wasn't there the best example right now? The 3 Holy Lands from before. If not for Jun Moxi's sudden appearance, bringing the last ray of light to this world, perhaps it would really be like that prophecy. It was a dream, neither an illusion nor an illusion. 10,000 years of glory, all gone in an instant. Gu Han laughed bitterly. His thoughts were clearly the same as Jun Moxi's. But he didn't say it out loud, and Jun Moxi naturally wouldn't say it out loud either. Since the old man in front of him had already decided to atone for his sins with his death, then why should he mention what had happened before? Although a great mistake had been made, the starting point of a good person and a bad person was always different. Why destroy the last bit of dignity of a good person? Especially now that he had realized his mistake and was determined to make up for it at all costs. When a man is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is the most sorrowful. I want to remind you that after this, you must properly restrain the Xian beasts of Tian Fa. Gu Han said solemnly. Tian Fa Xian beasts are mostly simple-minded, without the scheming of humans. Their personalities are very cute, they dare to fight and charge, and can be said to be the cream of the crop of death warriors. Anyone would want to have such a subordinate, and you have indeed obtained the undying loyalty of Tian Fa. No one can doubt this. But precisely because of this, the personality of the Xian beasts also means that they are the easiest to be bewitched by others. Once they accept a certain theory, they will not change it even if they die. This is where your greatest success lies. But on the other hand, it is also where you have to guard against them. In the future, without the restrictions of the Holy Lands, The peak experts of Tian Fa will come into contact with humans sooner or later. At that time, no one can be sure what the consequences will be. I hope Manor Lord June doesn't misunderstand that this old man is trying to scare you, Gu Han said with a heavy heart. June Moxie lowered his head and thought deeply. I can guarantee that before I leave this continent, they will not do anything too out of line. Yes, you can guarantee it. I trust you 100%. If you, June Moxie, can't even do this, then you're not June Moxie. But what about after you leave? Gu Han asked. Just now, you also said that the path you will walk on should be the 9 Nether First Young Master's path. Your future is limitless, and it's impossible for you to stay in this world, on this continent, for long. Perhaps 100 years later, or 1,000 years later, or even just 10 or 20 years later, you will leave. After you leave, who will be able to truly control Tian Fa? Gu Han nodded towards Tian Fa's troops. In order to deal with the danger before us, you've already raised the strength of Tian Fa to an exceptionally terrifying level. With such strength, if they lose your control, perhaps no one in the entire continent will be able to keep any one of them in check. And you have nurtured over 100,000 of them. Perhaps this continent will not fall because of the strange races because of your existence, but also because of your existence, the Xian continent may become a paradise for the Xian beasts. June Moxie's face was dark, and it was hard to see any expression on it. If I were to think of it in a more pessimistic way, the humans of this continent may all become food or playthings for Tian Fa's Xian beasts. Gu Han said coldly. Tian Fa's Xian beasts are very humane, and they are also very loyal. This is something that no one can deny. But at the same time, there is something that cannot be denied. That is, the ferocious nature of beasts still exists, and will exist forever. Their thirst for battle, their bloodthirsty instincts are all very obvious. June Moxie's face was very ugly. This old man is not saying all this to ask you to do anything, but it's just to remind you, Gu Han said indifferently. If it really comes to that. Oh, no matter what, this old man is destined to not be able to see it. What has the future got to do with this old man? June Moxie said indifferently. Since you've already seen through this, then isn't it even more meaningless to say all this now? He rolled his eyes and said, Gu Han, what you said this time is indeed very reasonable. In the future, these things may indeed happen. But that is ultimately a matter of the future. Who can truly know what will happen in the future? It's still too early for us to be talking about this. Gu Han laughed bitterly. From June Moxie's words, he could tell how much June Moxie loved Tian Fa's Xian beasts. Most likely, in this evil monarch's heart, the people of the world really could not compare to Tian Fa's Xian beasts. This matter was truly strange to Gu Han. No matter what, June Moxie was still a human in his bones. Why didn't he have any sense of recognition towards humans? This was something that he really couldn't understand even if he died. He was not a fish, so he naturally didn't know the joys of fish. All right, this old man will suppress this matter and not mention it again, lest we become unhappy. Gu Han sighed helplessly. It doesn't matter. I have my own views in my heart. No matter what you say or what anyone else says, it's impossible to change my mind. June Moxie chuckled. So, you'd better save it. Hurry up and explain everything that needs to be explained in one go. Gu Han rolled his eyes in anger. What do you mean by hurry up and explain everything that needs to be explained in one go? Even if this old man is about to die, it's not to that extent yet, right? It's as if I'll be done for after this. One really has to be prepared to be angered to death at any moment when speaking to this brat. What are you looking at me for? June Moxie couldn't help but feel confused when he saw Gu Han glaring at him. I say, old Gu, I didn't take the initiative to curse you to die, right? You were the one who said that you had enough of living and wanted to die. I was respecting your opinion and didn't stop you, but you're unhappy again. Besides, you were the one who dragged me here, saying that I wanted to listen to your nagging. Nagging? I'll just nagging, but you're not saying it now. What the hell is this, so depressing? Depressing? When he heard the last 3 words, Gu-han truly felt this way. You're still depressed? This old man is so depressed that he almost can't speak. Forget it, this old man is a person who's about to die. I won't lower myself to your level. Gu-han exhaled, wanting to end this argument. That's right, didn't you admit that you're a person who's about to die? You said it yourself, I didn't say it. June Moxie snorted. What last words do you have? Hurry up and say it. I still have many things to do. I'm in a hurry. Gu-han almost fainted. Damn it, even if I don't have the will to die, I'll probably be angered to death by this bastard. June Moxie, you're really too cold towards life. Don't you feel that even though our 3 holy lands have done many wrong things, in this final battle, we'll still fight valiantly, fight brilliantly, and live up to our legendary name? Gu-han was depressed to death. Old Gu revealed the final plan of the 3 holy land. At the end of the day, he still hoped to receive a word of praise from June Moxie. At the very least, in this world, there would still be someone who understood the truth. Even if the entire world doesn't know, we've still sacrificed a lot. At the very least, there's an evil monarch as a witness. Right now, the only thing he hoped for was for this evil monarch to say a word of praise. That was all. Because right now, June Moxie was already a person who stood at the peak of the world. Who would have thought that this brat would be stingy to such an extent? Not to mention praise, he didn't even say a word of pity. Chapter 1182. Hearing that, Gu-han was taken aback. Then, he stroked his beard and smiled. That's right. In his heart, June Moxie was still able to see things clearly. June Moxie continued. You also said earlier that if you die, you won't be able to see anything in the future. Then, since that's the case, why do you need to care about what will happen to the world after you die? When I was alive, I worked my heart out for the country, the people, and the world. But after I die, why do I still need to think about the flood of the world? Gu-han was taken aback. He used all his strength to break off a strand of his beard. This June Moxie, I've just expressed my agreement with a few sentences, and he's already flirting with me again. This person's way of doing things is really laughable. What's more, you died to defend your honor and dignity. Isn't that so? June Moxie continued. In this world, there are people like this dying every day. The wife is having an affair, and the husband is cuckolded. In a fit of rage, for the sake of his own dignity, he fights with the adulterer, and ultimately dies. Isn't this also for the sake of protecting his own dignity? If you look at the reason, how different are the two? June Moxie continued as though it was a matter of fact. Since everyone is fighting for their own dignity, for their own glory, for their own interests to not be infringed upon. Could it be that there's no fundamental difference? Why do I have to lament a few words about your deaths? Could it be that if I lament a few words, you guys will become immortals? Gu-han was so angry that his beard was trembling. His limbs were trembling and his face was turning blue. If not for the fact that this time and place were really not suitable, Gu-han really wanted to have a battle to the death with June Moxie right now. This is too shameful. We died in battle for the sake of the world, but in his mouth we actually received the same evaluation as those useless men who were cuckolded. This was simply going too far. Truly intolerable. June Moxie. Gu-han panted heavily, his eyes extremely malevolent as he roared in a low voice. Old Gu, you're losing your composure. June Moxie kindly reminded him. This old man lost his composure. This old man lost his composure, your head. Gu-han panted heavily. You scoundrel who can anger people to death just by opening your mouth. You're really pissing me off. It had to be said that the sharp-tongued great elder of Heaven Saint Palace was indeed not his forte. Although her face was flushed red, she didn't curse out loud. June Moxie was about to open his mouth again when Gu Han stretched out his hand, panting heavily as he stopped him. Please don't speak for now. Wait until I'm done. June Moxie was stunned. What was going on? Why did he become you? Apart from the war, there's another source of trouble, Zhan Luanhui. This person is still not dead. Gu Han took a few deep breaths before he managed to calm himself down. This was the first time in more than 3,000 years that his emotions had fluctuated so violently. Even when he found out that Zhan Luanhui had stolen the 9 illusory quicksand, he didn't feel so stifled. Regardless of whether the 3 Holy Lands are still around after this war, you must be careful of Zhan Luanhui. Gu Han calmed himself down and said in one breath. Also, the 9 illusory quicksand is extremely useful for the soul, and the amount that Zhan Luanhui had stolen is so huge. If you meet him, you must be careful. Don't be careless. Zhan Kuang's level of terror is not something you can imagine at your current level. June Moxie was silent for a moment before he said, "Many thanks. Thank your head," Gu Han said angrily. "This old man is already very lucky that I didn't die from anger just now. I wonder if Senior is still as agitated as before?" June Moxie blinked and asked. Gu Han laughed helplessly. "I know what you mean. You want to anger this old man to the point where he can't control his anger and vent it out to lessen my desire to die, right? But you've wasted your efforts, and this old man has also been angered by you for nothing." He let out a long sigh and said with a desolate expression, "The 3 Holy Lands have been passed down for more than 10,000 years. It can be said to be the result of the hard work of countless people. This old man has presided over the 3 Holy Lands for 2 generations, more than 5,000 years. And the 3 Holy Lands, Heaven Saint Palace, can be said to be the culmination of this old man's life. The pillar of Heaven's mountains collapsed, Heaven Saint Palace was destroyed, and my skills fell from the peak to where I am now. At that time, this old man already felt that this old man's path in life had already come to an end. You don't have to say anything more. You're mistaken. I didn't say that I'm stopping you from dying." June Moxie was silent for a moment before he said, "I just want to ask you for one thing." "Ask me for one thing? How rare. Say it." Gu Han said straightforwardly. "The atmosphere in the 3 Holy Lands right now is a little too pessimistic and tragic. Gu Han, look at your subordinates, all of them look like they're carrying a volcano on their shoulders. Their entire bodies are filled with a kind of urgency to die in battle at any time." June Moxie snorted Lingling and said, "That's right, this is the spirit that we should have when we're willing to sacrifice our lives for the mainland. Is there something wrong with that?" Gu Han asked in confusion. "I'm not questioning your determination, nor am I asking you to let go of this desire to die. What I'm asking is that even if you really have to die, you must die with the greatest value." June Moxie pointed a finger. "Gu Han, including yourself, everyone in the 3 Holy Lands holds the same thought. Then let me ask you, once the battle officially starts, how many experts from the Holy Lands will be so impatient that they'll rush to self-detonate?" Gu Han was stunned. Indeed, as June Moxie had said, there were many people in the Holy Lands who held the same thought. As long as the battle started, they would rush into the strange races and self-detonate. They would seek a quick release. They would kill the enemy and atone for their sins. With the power of a Saint Emperor, he can easily kill hundreds of non-humankind warriors, dozens of hell-enduring ghosts, and even a few peak-level frenzy blade-enduring earths. Only then will he self-detonate, and he can drag many more down with him. If you self-detonate right away, don't you think it's a waste? June Moxie said lightly. Even if you really have to die, you must die with the greatest value. If you can kill 10,000 people before dying, Why do you have to self-detonate when you've only killed 100? Since you've decided to die in battle, why not bring out the last bit of value you have? So I'm asking you to fight with a normal heart. Only when there's really no way out, when there's no other way, then self-detonate. June Moxie rolled his eyes, and 2 rays of cold light shot out from his eyes. Don't think that I'm ruthless. I'm not only saying this to you guys. I've also said this to my brothers and even to myself, because this is not just your battle, it's our battle. If we're talking about deaths, the number of people that the 3 Holy Lands have right now is only a fraction of what we have. Death, in this battle, is a possibility for anyone. It's possible that all of you have died, and I'm still alive. But it's also possible that all of us have died, and the one left alive is your Holy Lands people. This is something that no one can say for sure. Everything is decided by man, and fate is decided by the heavens. June Moxie slowly turned his head and said, Old Goo, you've lived for 5,000 years, and your understanding of the cruelty of war is much clearer than mine. War is just like that. No one has ever said that someone will definitely not die in this battle, and that person will definitely not die. Instead, that person might be the first to die, and die the fastest. So, please don't leave any funeral arrangements to me. I might not be able to survive, and I might even need to rely on you to help me collect my corpse. And perhaps there's no corpse to collect anymore. Because if I'm destined to die, I'll definitely drag as many enemies as I can with me before I die. To lighten your burden a little, I hope that you guys can do the same. At least don't explode into fireworks for the sake of some *T glory of the 3 Holy Lands. If I wanted to watch the fireworks, it wouldn't be worth it to come all the way here. June Moxie looked at Gu Han coldly and said, So, I'm begging you guys, don't die so stupidly, and don't die so retarded. Because if that's the case, even if you guys die, I'll still look down on you. 10,000 times. Even if you guys kill yourselves after winning, I won't stop you. But, in this battle where there's little hope, please fight with all your might, and don't just think about exploding yourselves. Do you understand? Gu Han was completely stunned. Yes, everyone on his side already felt that there was no hope for this battle. At least, this was the case for the 3 Holy Land. That was why they made this decision to die for a noble cause. But could he refute June Moxie's words? On what basis could he be sure that June Moxie, Tionfa, and the evil monarch Manor's forces would not die? His words woke him up from his dreams. If he was already so pessimistic and only wanted to pass all the responsibility to June Moxie and ignore it? This was an extremely selfish and irresponsible way of doing things. So this old man was wrong. I nearly made a huge mistake again. Gu Han sighed in shame. He felt so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. Just a moment ago, he thought that he was very heroic and tragic. But now, he realized that he was a complete and utter fool. The one who really didn't care about the big picture was actually himself, and everyone from the 3 Holy Lands. Death is a very easy thing. As long as you close your eyes, everything will end. But in this world, there are too many things that are even crueler than death. June Moxie said leisurely. Don't think that everything will end just like that. Only cowards will use death to escape. Right now, all of you are just a bunch of cowards who can't wait to use death to escape from your responsibilities. Gu Han was sweating profusely, and he felt his heart beating faster. Chapter 1183. June Moxie said coldly. Gu Han, Senior Gu. I want you to remember this. From now on, I do not wish to hear anyone say the words "I want to die" in front of me. If there is, I will immediately fulfill his wish. There is no need for him to find the strange races and play self-destruct. I can grant him his wish immediately. Letting him die without any pain is definitely better than self-destructing. I can even leave his corpse intact. June Moxie slowly turned around, his back facing Gu Han as he said coldly, "Perhaps you haven't realized how much of a blow such a sentence would have on the morale of your own army. Perhaps you might even think that it's very stirring and moving, and you might even be moved to tears. But to me, anyone who says such a sentence at this time and place is an unforgivable sin. Not even 1,000 cuts and 10,000 reincarnations can atone for their sins. Dying from being cuckolded by his wife is at most the only one who dies. But if you all die like this, it will indirectly send countless of my brothers to their graves. So many saint venerables and saint monarchs have already committed suicide in despair. What use are we, who are even weaker? Is there any meaning in resisting? Take a guess, will there be anyone who thinks this way? And how many people will think this way?" June Moxie said mockingly. "Don't think that my words earlier were insulting you all and desecrating your spirit. It is truly because of your rash self-destructions that you are inferior to those men whose wives committed adultery and went to find someone else to die. From the way I see it, they at least have some vigor. But all of you don't even have that bit of vigor. The so-called 10,000 years of glory, the final glory, all of you protect it with all your might. But in your hearts, all of these are not even worth a fart." Slowly taking 2 steps forward, June Moxie raised his hand and lightly knocked on the sealed spatial wall. "Old Gu, don't tell me you want me to forcefully break open your spatial seal and get out? Please wait a moment. I still have one last thing to ask of Manor Lord June." When Gu Han turned around, June Moxie almost jumped in fright. Gu Han's hair had actually turned completely white in this short period of time. The first time they met, Gu Han still had jet black hair and looked no different from a middle-aged man. And the second time they met on this pillar of heaven's mountains, Gu Han, whose vitality was greatly injured, already had a head of white hair, wrinkles appearing on his face, and the signs of aging were obvious. However, in just a few short days, Gu Han's hair had actually turned completely white at this moment. In the short span of less than 7 days, this great sage had suffered too great of a blow. First, the Heaven Saint Palace, which they had protected for 2 lifetimes, was suddenly destroyed, and the heavenly Pillar Mountains, which separated the 2 sides of the continent, had also collapsed. It was as if the faith in his heart had been taken away by someone. His entire body had almost become an empty shell. But that was not all. The mysterious skill that he had been proud of all his life had suddenly slipped when he was about to break through the most important threshold. It dropped by a large margin. If that was all, he could still hold on. But soon after, he found out that the 10,000 years of protection of the Holy Lands, the 5,000 years he had spent in the war for seizing the heavens, was actually a huge mistake. This kind of blow completely crushed his spirit. His only goal was death. Death was his only goal. They would perish together with the outsiders. But now, he was told, this kind of death was only escaping, and was the most shameful and cowardly act. In fact, it was even worse than those men who had been cuckolded. Gu Han had broken down. It was a complete and utter collapse. His profound Xian cultivation had completely collapsed at this moment, and the appearance that he had maintained for thousands of years had withered in an instant. But June Moxie still felt that there should be other reasons. Regardless of Gu Han or the legendary Wu Shangyun, they should not be this weak. Finally, I have a personal matter to ask of you. Gu Han fell silent for a long time, until June Moxie was about to lose his patience. Only then did he turn around shakily, his eyes glistening with tears. Please, 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 take good care of Qiao Ying. June Moxie could not help but fall silent. Qiao Ying is a pitiful girl. The all-seeing eye created her, but it was also because of the all-seeing eye that she was brought into the Heaven Saint Palace at a young age. She spent thousands of years alone. Although she has lived for many years, her heart is still stuck in the prime of her youth. The happiness that a woman should enjoy, the love of a husband and children, she has none of that. None of that. For the Holy Lands, For the war, for seizing the heavens, she has given up everything. Now I entrust her to you. Gu Han looked at Jun Moxie, his eyes filled with pleading. I hope that you can take good care of her. If possible, if she is still alive after this battle, this old man hopes that she can find her own home, find her own happiness, the happiness of a woman. Jun Moxie still maintained his silence, because he could tell that Gu Han had not finished speaking, and should have other instructions. But Gu Han stopped, his expression filled with sorrow and sorrow. I'm very curious. Other than the people closest to her, no one should know that Xiao Ying has the yin-yang eyes. Even those closest to her might not understand what she has. Jun Moxie said indifferently, this kind of thing is not a rare thing. People often say that children can see strange things. As time goes by, this kind of innate talent will gradually disappear, and they will become ordinary people. He coughed and said, Why was only Xiao Ying discovered by you? Is it really a coincidence? Gu Han's body trembled, and he did not speak for a long, long time. His eyes stared at the sky, and his lifeless gaze slowly turned red. He finally closed his eyes, and with a tone as if he was about to die, he said, Because Xiao Ying's father is not an ordinary person, she is my daughter. Although Jun Moxie had already guessed something, he was still shocked by this sentence. Gu Han's love for Xiao Ying, as well as that reluctance earlier. And after Xiao Ying went to Tian Fa's camp, Gu Han's relaxed expression made Jun Moxie feel that something was amiss. But he did not expect that Xiao Ying was Gu Han's daughter, because the difference in age between the two was too great. Love has always been difficult. When this old man was in Heaven's Saint Palace in this life, my beloved wife had already passed away 200 years ago. Gu Han said bitterly. There was a period of time when I missed her day and night, often dreaming of her alone at the peak of a mountain, quietly reminiscing about the past. But at that time I discovered that it was precisely because of those days of deep affection and persistence that my skills improved greatly. Normally, I would not be able to break through the bottleneck, but at that time I easily passed it. Because at that time, other than my deceased wife, there was really nothing else in my heart. Instead, my mind was clear, and my cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. My emotions, my love, my heart. Jun Moxie sighed lightly. He could almost guess what Gu Han was going to say next. After 1,000 years, this old man's heart had already reached the state of a dry well, without any ripples. And my cultivation also quietened down. For a long time, there were no signs of a breakthrough. At the start, this old man did not think much of it, and only thought that success would come naturally. But after a few hundred years, I still maintained the same state. This old man then thought of how I could break through my cultivation because I missed my deceased wife. But at that time, my wife had already passed away for 1,500 years. Even if I forced myself to recall it, all the memories were so blurry. In fact, there was no longer any sadness. Gu Han said in a low voice. So you thought that instead of being like that, you might as well enter the world again and try to break through the barrier of love? Jun Moxie sighed. He really did not know whether to reprimand him or scold him. This kind of situation was not uncommon. Some people used the power of hatred to break through, some used the power of dual cultivation with women to break through, and some simply used the power of bloodthirst and cruelty to break through. But one thing was certain. No matter what one used, as long as one relied on external forces, they would definitely not be able to reach the true peak. Especially this kind of deliberate method. Gu Han obviously planned to use the immersion of love to break through. That was not a very strange method. That's right. Gu Han nodded. At that time, this old man had cultivated for 2 lifetimes. Using the name Gu Han, I was still over 1,700 years old. But because of my profound cultivation and my ability to maintain my youthfulness, I looked like a 30-year-old man. And after changing my appearance, I was like a completely different person from my original appearance. After descending the mountain, it did not take me much effort to find a suitable candidate. Gu Han took a sorrowful breath and said, I wholeheartedly wanted to pursue that feeling of heartbreak. Naturally, I found a lady who did not have high talent and could not cultivate profound strength. I still remember her name, Qiao Qingyi. She was a good lady who was beautiful and intelligent, but she was born with a weak body. This old man. Gu Han could barely speak. This old man wanted to love her with all my heart and give all my feelings, but I also had to watch her die. This kind of feeling is really, a few years later, she gave birth to a daughter for me. Just like that, her body became even weaker. After another 2 years, she could not recover from her illness and finally passed away. Gu Han's voice trembled. Before she died, she grabbed my hand and said, No matter what, I have to take good care of our daughter. Then, she said one sentence and did not look at me anymore. But her last sentence, even until now, every time I think about it, this old man's heart breaks, and I feel so guilty. She said, I know you are a capable person. I don't blame you. To be able to be with you for these few years, to be husband and wife, I am very satisfied, really very satisfied. This life is enough. Gu Han's old tears flowed down, and suddenly, he was sobbing uncontrollably. Jun Emosia let out a deep sigh. Another girl with a pure heart. But it was a pity that since ancient times, beauties often had unlucky fates. This Gu Han was really ruthless. And although his experience was created by himself, it was indeed tragic enough. Chapter 1184. With the sharpness of a woman's senses, it would be strange if this person who had slept by his side for so long could not detect any abnormalities in Gu Han. But the rarest thing was that this woman did not ask for anything from the start to the end. She hid everything in her heart, afraid that if she mentioned it, it would ruin this beautiful marriage. She was already satisfied to be able to stay with the person she loved for a few years, and had no other requests. The only thing she was worried about was her own daughter perhaps. It was this deep love and understanding that caused Gu Han to suffer for his entire life until now. Extreme love, extreme heart. But this kind of purposefulness caused him to suffer for thousands of years, and he could not forget it, especially when Xiao Ying was constantly reminding him. This old man had originally wanted to entrusting her to a worthy relative and let her live an ordinary but wealthy life. But unexpectedly, I discovered that Ying actually had a natural eye for beauty. Gu Han let out a long sigh, and after a long while, he said, During the war for seizing the heavens, the strange race's concealment techniques caused unimaginable casualties to us. So you brought your own daughter to the heavenly Saint Mountain, and used the name of the world to imprison your own daughter for thousands of years. And because of that, you also destroyed her lifelong happiness. What a great father! Jun Moxie said coldly and sharply. In truth, Jun Moxie could not help but sigh in his heart. These people from the 3 Holy Lands, for the sake of the war for seizing the heavens, how many had they sacrificed? What they sacrificed was not only their lives, but also their kinship, friendship, love, and everything else. Stupid? Noble? Worthy of respect? Or worthy of cursing? At this moment, Jun Moxie only felt that his heart was in a mess. He could use the perspective of a father to criticize Gu Han, and use the crime of being a fickle lover to criticize him. But as for everything else, Jun Moxie could not find a suitable reason to criticize him. This kind of spirit, he really did not know how to evaluate it. Should he praise him, or should he criticize him? Looking at Gu Han in front of him, Jun Moxie really did not know what kind of opinion he should have towards him. Should he admire him? Despise him? Scold him? Praise him? The saying that a pitiful person must have a hateful side was absolutely true. But to be able to make Jun Moxie feel so complicated in his heart, Whether it was in his previous life or this life, he was truly the first person in both worlds. She hated him to the extreme and despised him to the extreme. But in his heart, he also felt some admiration and reverence. If their positions were reversed, June Moxie knew that he would never make such a huge sacrifice. Even if he really took the world as his responsibility, he still couldn't do it. He was neither as heartless as Gu Han, nor as emotional as Gu Han. But Gu Han's heartlessness was towards his family. He had feelings, but it was for the world. June Moxie was the complete opposite of him. They said that Gu Han was vicious and merciless, but he truly cared for the world and blessed the people. They said that he was a man with lofty ideals, heroic and chivalrous, but he watched his beloved wife die with his own eyes, and personally raised his own daughter to become a tool of war in the war for seizing the heavens. He was unreservedly pious towards the world, his ideals, his legacy, and his glory. But only towards his own family was he so cruel and vicious. Such a person, if it were you, how would you evaluate him? I think, since Qiao Ying was named after her mother, she should still be unaware of her own birth, right? Much less knowing that she has such a noble father. June Moxie asked Lingling. As for Qiao Ying's current birth, with Gu Han's ability, it was simply too easy to create a false impression for her. There was no difficulty at all. Of course she doesn't know, how could I let her know? Gu Han said. I already owe the mother and daughter too much. I feel proud for Qiao Ying to have such a noble father like you. June Moxie said mockingly. You have indeed given up everything for the Holy Lands. Even your own beloved was used as a training tool, your own daughter as a tool of war, and even you, yourself, have invested your entire life, no, 2 lifetimes. Admirable, admirable. Gu Han gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds, his face extremely twisted. As if there was an intense pain in his heart, he suddenly said hoarsely, In my 2 lifetimes, this is the only bloodline I have. How could I not want to give my daughter a good ending? To let her live a prosperous and peaceful life? How could I not want to hug my daughter and cry? How could I not want to give her the happiness she deserves, to pour out our hearts to each other? I want. How could I not want? I want to die. But, if I did that, what would happen to the people of the world? Without the help of Qiao Ying's all-seeing eye, could I just watch my brothers die one by one in the hands of the strange races? Be forced to perish together with the strange races, sacrificing themselves heroically? Yes, I despicably sacrificed my daughter's happiness, but do you know how much my daughter has saved for the Holy Lands? Gu Han clenched his fists tightly. Those are also my brothers. They are also my brothers and sisters. Could it be that my daughter deserves to enjoy happiness, while they deserve to die? Yes, what you have said is absolutely correct. But what you shouldn't have done, and what I find most displeasing to the eye, is that you have placed such a heavy responsibility on a woman. June Moxie Lingling said, Then, what's the use of men in this world? Those brothers of yours have already enjoyed what they deserve. Beautiful wives and concubines, children and children, changing batch after batch. For thousands of years, just their wives and concubines alone are enough to form a mountain of corpses. Why didn't you say all this? June Moxie said fiercely, They have already enjoyed what ordinary people cannot. Even if they die, it is only right. But you allowed your daughter to live for thousands of years, but the colors of life have not even begun to unfold. How cruel is this great father of yours! This world is ultimately still a society where men are supreme. Men, while enjoying privileges, also have corresponding duties. If those responsibilities that should be shouldered by men are forcefully placed on women, in exchange for the survival of men, if those brothers of yours still have a bit of conscience, they would have long committed suicide out of shame. Instead of shamelessly using that woman's talent time and time again, to open up a shortcut to victory for them, to calmly obtain glory and praise, as well as those illusory and laughable glory that is not even worth a fart. Such a victory is dirty, downright filthy and despicable. June Moxie said sternly, even if you have done so many things for this mainland, it is still shameful. Such safety. If you still have the slightest bit of bravery as a man, you should feel ashamed. If you still have the dignity of a man, you should feel ashamed. The lives that you have protected are not even worth a fart. War has always belonged to men. Men on the battlefield dying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, that is also what they deserve. But you want to let a woman who is already in a weak position to go into battle, to bear such a heavy responsibility, and even at the cost of that woman's lifelong happiness, eternal loneliness. Can you really have a clear conscience? Not only was June Moxie a typical nationalist, he was also a typical male chauvinist. In his previous life, every time he saw the royal family send off their princesses in the name of marriage, he would scold them violently. A war that belongs to men, on what basis should women be pushed to be sacrificed? Using a woman's crotch in exchange for peace, could it be that all the men in the world could live with a clear conscience, singing and dancing in celebration of peace? What kind of F***-ket-up theory was that? Bastard logic. Cowardly logic. So, when he heard that Gu Han sacrificed his daughter, June Moxie's words were like firecrackers, extremely sharp, extremely incisive, merciless. Towards the end, his tone was harsh and harsh. From Gu Han's point of view, perhaps it was not wrong. Perhaps it was worth praising. But June Moxie had never agreed with such a method. Or perhaps he had gone too far, too extreme. But June Moxie had always been an extreme person. This kind of thinking was deeply rooted in his heart. If someone told him that as long as they sacrificed Mei Shuiyan or any other woman from the June family, they would be able to bring peace to the world, to the continent, then June Moxie's first reaction would definitely be to slaughter that person's entire family. Gu Han listened to June Moxie's series of accusations in a stupefied manner, but he did not say a word. After a long time, he sighed softly and said, "Regardless of whether my choice was right or wrong, I have already done it. Now that Ing-Er is on your side, I entrust her safety to you. Life or death in this battle, it is up to the heavens. But if we can survive, I hope that you can take care of her for me." June Moxie laughed coldly. "Now, you finally remember that she is your biological daughter? After thousands of years, you finally remember the deep love between father and daughter? Just before you fall, you finally remember a little bit of your bloodline? Gu Han, you are such a hypocrite. It doesn't matter if you're hypocritical, shameless, or despicable. You can say whatever you want." Gu Han's voice also became agitated. "In the end, it cannot cover up the fact that blood is thicker than water. Of course it cannot be covered up. But I, June Moxie, do not have the obligation to take care of your daughter for you. On what basis? I must bear this responsibility," June Moxie said coldly. "This is your own matter, you settle it yourself. I want you to marry her." Gu Han suddenly turned around and grabbed June Moxie's collar. He gritted his teeth and said, "Marry her, take care of her. This old man can see that in these thousands of years, she only treats you differently." "Are you kidding me? I should marry her just because she treats me differently?" June Moxie laughed coldly and said, "In that case, the number of women I should marry in this world is truly too many. From the way I see it, every single woman with a bit of beauty in this world treats me differently. Then should I marry all of them? I don't care about others. But you have to take good care of my daughter." Gu Han panted a few times and suddenly smiled slyly. "June Moxie, this is all I have to say. Do you think that this old man can't see that little bit of perverted heart of yours? What a joke, we are all men. When you first went to Mount Heaven Saint, this old man had already seen it. In this world, the only one suitable for Ing-Er is you. Of course I have perverted heart. Perverted heart is something that all men have. As long as they are men, they will take a few more glances when they see a beautiful lady. June Moxey was indeed thick-skinned. Even after being pointed out by the lady's father, he did not turn red at all. Instead, he said fiercely, "I only want to play around, I have no intention of marrying her at all. Not to mention anything else, just based on the fact that she is your daughter, this old man will not marry her if I say so." Chapter 1185. As he said that, June Moxey pointed at Gu Han's hand that was grabbing onto his clothes. "Let go! What did you say? Just playing?" Gu Han's gaze instantly turned extremely dangerous as he stared at June Moxey's eyes. June Moxey stared back provocatively, a cold smile hanging on his lip. But Gu Han laughed lightly and let go of his hand. "Since you said it's just playing, then let's play. Then let's have fun and continue to have fun. If the evil monarch wants to play, what can a dying man like me do? Even if I don't accept my fate, what can I do?" June Moxey was dumbfounded. He really didn't expect such a reply and couldn't help but scold. "F***CKU. What the F***CK are you saying? That's your daughter. Human words. Why, Manor Lord June doesn't understand." Gu Han laughed. "This old man has nothing else to say, and will not continue to be angry with you here." Gu Han grunted and said, "One more thing, she's not my daughter. Please remember, never let her know that she's my daughter. This is this old man's last request to you." After saying that, Gu Han suddenly released the spatial lock and walked out. With 2 steps, he was already in the midst of the experts from the Holy Lands. Although his hair and beard were already snow-white, his expression actually became exceptionally relaxed. His aura was even more majestic, as if he had suddenly become a different person. Although he hadn't recovered to the height that June Moxey had when they first met, he was like a completely different person from before. Whether he was right or wrong, his entire life's worth of merits and demerits were all clearly discussed with June Moxey during the spatial lock earlier. Even if he was wrong, he had already protected the continent for tens of thousands of years. Even if he was right and had merits, he had also done too many extremely wrong things. But right now, all of this was no longer important. The only important thing was the battle in front of him. Gu Han snorted disdainfully at June Moxey's words of playing around. If the evil monarch was actually such an irresponsible person, then Gu Han could only admit that he had misjudged him. As he had said before, "No matter what you do, I won't know." June Moxey didn't know whether to laugh or cry when faced with a person who went from being extremely responsible to being extremely irresponsible in just a second. Damn it, what the hell is this? What kind of person was this? But June Moxey also knew that regardless of Gu Han's pain, guilt, or shame, the moment he walked out of this spatial lock, everything had turned into nothingness, because he had already transferred everything that had happened here onto himself. Gu Han really did not want to live anymore. Similarly, the Holy Land was destined to become a phantom in this battle, an existence that would only be recorded in the history books. This was their only pursuit now, and it was also their greatest dream. Even if June Moxey knelt down and begged them, they wouldn't change their minds. Their hearts were dead. June Moxey couldn't stop their deaths even if he wanted to. Furthermore, he didn't want to stop them. Just like what he had said before, even if they had to die, they had to pay the greatest price. This was June Moxey's only request. This request could be cold-blooded, utilitarian, or cruel. But it was the only request he could make. Only like this would it be of considerable value to this battle. Only like this would it be responsible to the Xian continent. If he allowed these experts to self-destruct just because they were facing some small fries, then June Dashao would really want to cry but have no tears. A man of war, live freely and die heroically. have a clear conscience, and have no regrets in this life. Even if they turned into smoke in the end, it would still be a heroic sunset. This is a man. This is a man worthy of the name. This was not only the request that June Moxie had for the 3 Holy Lands, it was also the request that he had for all his subordinates, for all the warriors of Tian-Fa, and more importantly, for himself. A rumbling sound suddenly rang out from afar. The reinforcements from Tian-Fa had finally arrived. All the flying Xian beasts of 7th level and above were sent out at the same time. Although they were not strong enough and needed to rest, they still managed to send a large number of troops over at this critical moment. When June Moxie went over, Mei Shuyan was taking stock of the troop. She also informed June Moxie of a piece of good news. Other than the Rock Tribe and Monkey Tribe, who were slightly weaker and were still on their way, the Lion Tribe, Leopard Tribe, Condor Tribe, and Wolf Tribe, with 5,000 warriors from each tribe, had already arrived at the encampment. This greatly alleviated the already stretched battle strength of their side. Up until now, Tian-Fa's total battle strength had reached 34,000 people, while the Holy Lands still had 7,000 people. The total number of combatants on both sides was 41,000, and even the weakest among them was at the Venerable Realm. Everyone was fully prepared for battle. At noon, with Gu Han in the lead, he led Mo Wudao and the other members of the 3 Holy Lands into 10 teams and arrived at Tian-Fa's encampment in an orderly manner, accepting June Moxie's command. June Moxie did not reject this action of the Holy Lands. Instead, he accepted it. No matter how dirty or how much hatred they had in the past, at this moment, they were all comrades standing in the same trench. The only exception was the 5 people who originally followed Xia Chong Tian. No matter what, they were unwilling to form a team with the other people from the Holy Lands and stayed outside alone. No matter how Gu Han tried to move them with emotion, reason, they still did not change their original intentions. We will definitely participate in this calamity, but we will definitely not form a team with you. We will kill our own people, and we don't need you to care whether we live or die. Since you all stood by and did nothing when we were being sought for revenge, then why should we listen to you now? At the same time, we will never accept any kind of command, especially from our enemies. Although they did not say it out loud, their expressions and actions were clear. To this, June Moxie directly ignored it. He even stopped those who wanted to persuade them. They could do whatever they wanted. Even if they wanted to self-destruct, no one would stop them. A large-scale war involving hundreds of thousands of people could break out at any time. It didn't matter if there were more or less people. Do you think that people will coax you just because you throw a tantrum like this? This young master does not have the time for that. When the Palace Lord of Hermitage, or rather the former Palace Lord, Mo Wudao, walked in, his face was dark and he did not say a word. He only stared at June Moxie with a complicated gaze. Unfortunately, June Moxie still did not have the time to bother with him. No matter how complicated his gaze was, it was meaningless to the current situation. On the other hand, June Moxie had a few warm words with one of the guards of the battlefield for seizing the heavens. Senior Ling Tong, long time no see. How have you been? Ling Tong laughed bitterly and couldn't help but sigh. Manor Lord June, your speed is truly number 1 in all of history. I'm impressed. The number 1 in all of history was naturally not referring to June Moxie's speed of movement, but his advancement speed. June Moxie's advancement speed was truly a little too monstrous. Even the 9 Nether First Young Master did not have such a speed. A youth who was not even 20 years old actually possessed the legendary 4th level Saint Monarch speed. This was the most unbelievable thing. Furthermore, this youth was just a wastrel who could not even be considered a Xian cultivator 3 years ago. June Moxie laughed heartily and said sincerely, Senior Ling Tong, this June still has to thank you for distinguishing right from wrong back then. When I think of Senior's elegance back then, I can't help but reminisce about it. Lung Tong laughed and said, "Preposterous. At that time, I was just pushing the boat along with the current. I believe that even if I didn't make that choice, you would still have the ability to resolve the crisis that time without suffering any losses. Besides, you already had the upper hand at that time, haha. Although that's the case, Jun Moxie still owes you a favor." Jun Moxie laughed before his expression turned serious. "Will you be moving together with the Holy Lands this time?" This question was basically asking Lung Tong if he was prepared to die for this trip. "Of course. Spilling my blood here is my greatest honor. It is also my greatest wish," Lung Tong said solemnly. "I, Lung Tong, have cultivated my entire life for nothing more than this battle." "Good." Jun Moxie nodded his head slowly and let out a long sigh. Lung Tong, as expected of a real man, a good man. In terms of wit, survival, Xian Qi advancement, and martial arts improvement, you are not a match for me. But in terms of distinguishing right from wrong, chivalrous, and carefree, I am no match for you. When these words were said, even Gu Han's expression changed. Although Lung Tong's cultivation was not low, he was only a saint. Why was he able to receive such high praise from the evil monarch? With the wisdom and experience of the crowd, they could naturally tell that Jun Moxie's words were spoken from the bottom of his heart. There was not the slightest bit of flattery in them. Jun Moxie's words were both praise and admiration for Lung Tong, as well as a conclusion for himself. Only he understood himself. Jun Moxie was clear that he had too many weaknesses. His personality was eccentric, egoistic, and extreme. Think about it, if I didn't have the Hongjun Pagoda, this heaven-defying cheating device, in this world where the strong are revered and the fist is the strongest, I'm afraid I would have died countless times by now. If not for the existence of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie believed that with his perseverance, he would have a chance to raise his cultivation to the Earth Xian realm within this year. That was already an optimistic estimate. As for the peak of a 4th-level Saint Monarch right now, even if he tore apart his bones and flesh piece by piece, it would still be impossible. Chapter 1186. He was really rebellious. He liked to break the rules and challenge authority. The more he fought against an opponent who was stronger than him, the more exciting and enjoyable it was. But with his personality, in this world where the strong ruled, he would definitely not live long. He might still be free and unfettered today, but he would be killed by an expert tomorrow. He did not distinguish between good and evil. He only cared about what he liked. The so-called big picture, chivalrous, and serving the country and the people were not in his eyes at all. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength had gradually grown stronger and finally climbed to the peak of his current level, he would have probably died a long time ago. He might even have been annihilated long ago. The only trace left behind would only be to be recorded in history as a typical negative example. Yes, Jun Moxie was such a person. He had long seen through himself. In fact, Jun Moxie was also a human. So, like all ordinary people, he had countless weaknesses, whether it was his personality or habits. He was not a perfect person. In some aspects, he could even be said to be evil. However, he also had an area that was very different from others. He possessed extremely powerful strength that allowed him to disregard these weaknesses. Perhaps it should be said that he was lucky enough to possess the Hongjun Pagoda, a heaven-defying super-cheating device. He also had the knowledge from his previous life and the wisdom of his 2 lives. All of these weren't things that everyone could possess, and Jun Moxie met them. So, his personality became his personality. His shortcomings were no longer shortcomings. Coupled with his indomitable willpower and the magical Hongjun Pagoda, his life became the life of a legend. The so-called legend was actually a wonderful experience written by an ordinary person, or even a person with many flaws, due to fate. After the final success of the emperors and founding monarchs, Who would care that they had stolen their neighbor's chicken when they were young? Peeking at a girl bathing? Robbing someone else's things? Even if they knew about it, it was just an anecdote of a famous person that was used as inspiration, not as evidence for sentencing. There were countless hooligans in history, but the only one who was truly famous was Liu Bang. There were also countless people who had been humiliated by him, but the most famous one was Han Xin. Millions of people had sold plastic flowers, but only Superman Lee had achieved success. Right and wrong have always been judged by merit and demerit, not by right and wrong. This was the strangest phenomenon in human society. Everyone will criticize and resist this kind of practice. They can't stand too many things, but we use the past weaknesses of celebrities to educate ourselves and urge ourselves. A little rascal who stole a chicken would be chased by the chicken's owner, or even the masses, for several streets, and would be cursed with a torrent of abuse. Everyone despised him to the extreme, but when it came to the story of the founding emperor stealing a chicken, they would only laugh. Or perhaps they were lamenting that even heroes had times of helplessness. Moreover, he was very understanding and in agreement. At that point, this was the only thing he could do. Why was it that when the former was criticized, the latter would only sigh in approval? What kind of logic was this? The reason was simple, and there was only one thing: because the latter succeeded. Only success. As long as you succeed, then your shortcomings will become your shining points. Don't think that I'm just trying to scare you. This is the truth. No matter how ridiculous it may seem, it is the truth. Clothes fluttering in the wind, a cold and indifferent voice said, "Fighting against those non-humankind scums, how can I, Chu Chi Hun, miss out on such a glorious thing?" With a swoosh, a man in white appeared outside the tent like a javelin, his eyes like a hawk, staring at June Moxie. "Chu Chi Hun, you're here." June Moxie called out in surprise. Who else could it be but the king of assassins? The #1 assassin in Xian, the supreme assassin Chu Chi Hun. Chu Chi Hun smiled faintly and slowly walked in. Speaking of which, Chu Chi Hun's current cultivation base was only at the 3rd level of the martial venerable realm. Any random person in the tent was much stronger than him, so he was not worth mentioning. Even so, Chu Chi Hun's expression did not change even in the face of so many powerhouses. His entire person was still like an unsheathed sharp sword. Unbearably sharp. A sword could be broken, but it would never bend. "How did you get here so quickly?" June Moxie was truly puzzled by this. News of the strange races invading the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had only spread not too long ago, and all the great families had yet to arrive. How was it that this Chu Chi Hun, who had always been a loner and never interfered with the mortal world, and should have been the last to receive the news, was able to arrive first? Previously, I received a deal worth 300,000 taels of silver. But this guy ran away. In the end, he escaped to a desert not far from here. Chu Chi Hun smiled. The muscles on his face were cold, as if they were carved out of ice. Although he was smiling from the bottom of his heart, in the eyes of the others, this king of assassins was still shivering. Even though he knew that this person's strength was not enough to pose a threat to him, he could not help but feel a sense of dread. This time, I thought that I had wasted too much time and was feeling depressed. Then, I met with a natural disaster and was almost buried in that desert. But I never thought that I would encounter such a rare event. Chu Chi Hun smiled. "I wonder if I'm late." "Not bad, not bad. Old Chu, you came at the right time. Not late at all." June Moxie laughed and warmly welcomed Chu Chi Hun in. "Supreme Assassin?" One of the saints from the 3 hallowed grounds grunted coldly and said, "He's just an Exalt Realm expert, yet he actually rushed over here. Is he trying to give his life away?" Chu Chi Hun narrowed his eyes and stared at the saint who had just spoken. He said coldly, "Compared to everyone here, my strength is undoubtedly very low. Naturally, I can't be compared to all of you peerless experts. However, facing off against the outsiders, even if I don't have the strength to truss a chicken, I will still rush here. Whether I die or not is my own business. I don't care about my own life, but what does it have to do with you? The saint was so angry that his face turned purple. He slammed the chair and was about to stand up. Furthermore, I didn't come here because you invited me. Chu Chihuan Lengling snorted. You're from the Three Holy Lands, right? Hee, if there were only the Holy Lands here, then I wouldn't have come here even if a knife was held to my neck. Chu Chihuan stared at the saint and said coldly, although I am only a venerable, I might be able to kill a saint with my sword. If you have any doubts, you can try. Chu Chi-hun only had the cultivation of a venerable, but in the face of so many saints and saint emperors, he was able to speak with confidence and composure. He was in a state of mutual hostility and did not show the slightest hint of fear. However, he wasn't wrong. With his technique of assassination, it might not be impossible for him to kill a saint if he was determined to do so. How dare you? The saint shouted angrily. The dignity of a saint could not tolerate someone who was not on the same level as him provoking him, even if this person was the #1 assassin of the Xian continent. How dare you? Jun Moxie shouted angrily. His eyes were filled with a cold light as he looked over and said darkly, You are just a saint. What right do you have to be so presumptuous in front of me? Just now, this saint used his low cultivation to reprimand Chu Chihuan, and now Jun Moxie used his low cultivation to rebuke him. This was retribution. No matter how weak the person he admired was, he would not allow outsiders to insult him. Tang Yuan was like that in the past, and Chu Chihuan was like that now. The saint was so angry that his face turned yellow, and his chest was about to explode. But he just stood there, unable to say a word. Even though he dared to rebuke Chu Chihuan, and even had the intention to attack, he did not dare to say a word when he was rebuked. Because the person rebuking him was Jun Moxie. Chu Chihuan dared to rebuke him, but he did not dare to go against Jun Moxie. The difference between them was self-evident. Sit down. Mo Wudao shouted angrily as he looked at the saint. Things have already come to this. How can you still be in the mood to get rid of dissidents? Kill each other? No matter what grudges Chu Chihuan had with the Holy Lands, the fact that he was here today meant that he had the heart to do his best for the continent. He is a hero. He is our friend. The saint sat down awkwardly and his face darkened. First, it was Jun Dashao's rebuke, and now it was the responsibility of a companion. It would be strange if his face did not turn black. Mo Wudao, haha, well done. I've interacted with you a few times before, but this is the only time that I feel that there's a reason why the Hermitage of the Three Holy Lands made you the Palace Lord. Jun Moxie praised. Mo Wudao smiled bitterly, but did not reply. Hermitage? Where was the Hermitage now? There were only ruins covered by rubble. Buried in there were countless corpses. Those were all their family and friends. The moment they thought of this, the Hermitage felt as if a knife was twisting in their hearts. It was a pity that the main culprit, Zhan Luanhui, had escaped in the previous battle. Although it was only his soul that had escaped, he was still alive. Now that the continent is on the brink of collapse, we can no longer care about our personal grudges. In this lifetime, we probably won't have the chance to take revenge with our own hands. This regret was undoubtedly the common regret of everyone from the Three Holy Lands, and also the greatest regret of their lives. Jun Moxie held on to Chu Chihuan's arm and walked in. His eyes Lengling looked at the people around him and said, Everyone, from now on, there will be a large number of people coming to help us in the battle. Those who are coming are either supreme martial artists, or Shin Xian, or Tian Xian, or Earth Xian. Their cultivation may not be worth mentioning in your eyes, or they may be existences like ants. But please remember, all those who are here are true men who want to do their best for this continent. They are all true iron-blooded men. Their hearts are redder than all of you, and their blood is hotter than all of you. I will not allow anyone to insult them again. Not even a single word or a single sentence. If anyone dares to say something like that again, then there will only be one result: death. Chapter 1187. The third chapter. When he said the last three words, Jun Moxie's eyes were fixed on Gu Han's face. Gu Han said lightly, "Manor Lord Jun's words are exactly what I wanted to say. If the people from the Holy Lands do something similar, then there's no need for Manor Lord Jun to do anything. This old man will personally kill them. Those who are willing to come here are all heroes of the continent. Those who blaspheme heroes die." When the two of them finished speaking, the entire place fell into a dead silence. Just as the two of them had said, the people from the three Holy Lands had been preparing for this battle for tens of thousands of years and were already used to it. But if someone from the continent came here, it meant that they knew they were going to die, but they still came to die. All for the sake of the continent. This kind of person was the most worthy of respect. Then, Jun Moxie smiled politely and led Chu Chihuan, the great assassin Chu, into the tent. Then, he led Chu Chihuan into the tents of the Beast Kings. Then, he arranged for Crane King and the rest to stand guard for Chu Chihuan so that he could improve his strength in peace. Seeing that Jun Moxie had taken out many miraculous pills to help him improve his strength, Chu Chihuan's face changed. Chu Chihuan's face instantly changed. "Jun Emosia, what do you mean? Do you also think that I am not strong enough? Not qualified to come to this battlefield?" Jun Emosia smiled lightly. "If it's someone who's used to smashing people with logic, at this point, you would probably say, 'I'm giving you this pill not for Chu Chihuan himself, but because I hope that the Supreme Assassin can be more effective in killing more outsiders scum.' I wonder if you'll be more willing to accept this kind of explanation. However, Jun Emosia will always be Jun Emosia. This was the case in the past, the present, and the future. I also gave you the pills that day. But, old Chu, you didn't talk nonsense like this." He looked deeply at Chu Chihuan and said lightly, "Could it be that the current Chu Chihuan is no longer the Chu Chihuan of the past?" Chu Chihuan was stunned for a moment. Then, he suddenly laughed and said, "Good, good. Jun Moxie will always be Jun Moxie. As expected of the King of Assassins that I, Chu Chihuan, acknowledge. Just these words of yours make me feel very comfortable in my heart." Since Jun Moxie was still Jun Moxie, Chu Chihuan was naturally still the Chu Chihuan of that day. "Since I owe you, I might as well owe you more. These pills want me to accept. It's good for me to improve my strength. No matter what, I'll be able to kill a few more alien scums." Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian took the pill and swallowed it. A moment later, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the afternoon. The sky was dark and hazy. Jun Moxie, Gu Han, Mei Shiyan, Mo Wudao, and 7 or 8 other leaders were drinking tea in a tent. Although the atmosphere was a little heavy, it could still be considered harmonious. Just at this moment, a mournful cry of a crane rang out from the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. From this sound, it was clearly the cry of 10 Xian cranes at the same time, a warning. Immediately after, the Xian cranes that were in charge of guarding the area also let out long cries at the same time. "Enemy attack!" The cry was still ringing in their ears. Jun Moxie and the rest had already appeared outside, looking towards the south. But the south was completely calm. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Everyone was surprised and uncertain in their hearts, and they guessed one after another. Could it be that another huge change had occurred? Tian Fa Xian Crane would never joke around with the sound of a warning, but it was clearly very calm. Just at this moment, Gu Han, Jun Moxie, and Mei Shuyan frowned at the same time. The 3 of them were far stronger than the rest. At the same time, they could vaguely sense that in the far north, there was a series of explosions. There are people fighting about 2,000 li to the northeast. and the battle is very intense. It should be the work of peak experts. Jun Moxie's face was solemn. The range of his divine sense far exceeded that of ordinary Xian cultivators. His hearing was also the best. First, he faintly heard a sharp cry coming from the northeast. Northeast? How could it be that direction? Gu Han and Mei Shuyan were shocked. They naturally did not doubt Jun Moxie's judgment. But that was the direction of the mainland. Right now, all the peak experts of the mainland were gathered here, or in the process of gathering here. This was a troubled time. No matter how pressing a personal grudge was, it should be temporarily guarded. How could there be people killing each other? And how could the two sides cause such a commotion? Just as everyone was puzzled, another strange tremor came from afar. Everyone felt the ground beneath their feet tremble slightly. This time, everyone's expression changed. Although the tremor was very light, the place where the fight took place was thousands of miles away. People couldn't help but think, if such a feeling could be felt in such a faraway place, then how tragic must the scene of the fight be? In this world, which expert has not come? Gu Han muttered to himself as he looked to the northeast. We can feel it even from here. Then the strength of the two sides must be really frightening. To be able to cause such an earth-shattering commotion, could it be that they are saint-level experts? Everyone here was a top expert. They all knew that to be able to cause such a huge commotion, the two sides were definitely not ordinary people. A fierce battle taking place 1,000 miles away could actually be sensed by people who were 1,000 miles away. Although there was indeed a factor of the three people's high cultivation, the two people in the battle might not necessarily lose to the three people who were at the top of the scene. In fact, they might even surpass them. If two people of Gu Han's level were to fight at the same distance, the sound might not be able to reach here. Suddenly, Jun Moxie's expression changed. Not good, it's getting closer. The battle between the two is quickly moving towards here. Everyone's expression changed. Now that the battle was dangerous, a great battle could break out at any time. Based on the strength that these two people had displayed, they were the top experts of the Xian continent. If they could participate in this great battle, wouldn't it be a great help? But on the other hand, with the abilities of these two people, if they were to become enemies, the negative effects would definitely cause a great disaster. Let's talk about righteousness. We only hope that we can pull them into our camp. Then we will have two more great helpers. Mo Wudao reminded softly. But his voice was also filled with uncertainty. A battle between two people with such strength, how could it be stopped just by talking about righteousness? As long as there was even the slightest bit of arrogance on both sides, this great battle could not possibly end. At this time, a Xian crane flew over from afar. In an instant, it transformed into a 2-meter-tall brawny man. His forehead was full of sweat as he landed on the ground with a "pew" sound. He reported loudly, "Big sister, brother-in-law, in the northeast direction, there are two peerless experts fighting at the same time, and they are currently heading this way." "Got it," Mei Shuyan replied. The brawny man grinned. The news had already been delivered. Leaping up, he transformed into a snow-white crane again and disappeared into the horizon. He did not even have the time to catch his breath. He immediately returned to the place where he was stationed and continued to closely monitor the development of the enemy's situation. The rumbling sounds were getting closer and closer. Not only did the two people who were fighting not lose momentum, but they were even more intense than before. It was as if they wanted to shatter all the mountains along the way, completely shatter them. Advancing all the way here, everyone's expression became heavier and heavier. Judging from the momentum, the cultivation of either one of the two people fighting was much higher than the majority of the people here. Elder Gu, in your memory, are there really such powerful experts in this world? And there are as many as two of them? Mei Shuyan asked. As she asked, everyone's gaze focused on Gu Han's face. How could a powerful existence with earth-shattering might be a nameless person? Not to mention two of them? But no matter how hard they searched, they had no impression of any of them. There are. Guhan laughed bitterly. But as far as I know, there is only one person. One person? Who is that person? Everyone asked simultaneously. At this time, an extremely sharp whistle came from the northeast direction. It soared into the sky, and a few white clouds drifting across the sky were suddenly torn apart at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into nothingness. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Could such power really be achieved by a human? Then, there were three strange dong-dong-dong sounds from afar. Everyone felt as if their hearts had been hammered 3 times by a 10,000-pound hammer. Their expressions turned ugly, and they could not help but be shocked. This was obviously the sound of a musical instrument. But what kind of musical instrument could achieve such a shocking effect? Before everyone could regain their senses, there were 3 zheng-zheng-zheng sounds from the zither, one after another. Then, there was another clear and long sound, as if a god was playing a flute with all his might. The entire world seemed to be split into 2 by this strange flute sound. As these sounds appeared one after another, a few people instantly recognized the identity of the newcomer. Their expressions changed as they shouted, 9 serenities and 14 masters. It's really him. Guhan sighed and said, That's right. The only person I could think of just now was 9 serenities and 14 masters. Everyone's expressions changed, especially those who had just exclaimed. These people were all people who had participated in the encirclement against 9 serenities and 14 masters hundreds of years ago. At this moment, when they heard the strange music, which seemed to be a mixture of several musical instruments, they immediately thought of this terrifying devil. This kind of strange music, this kind of strange power, and that magical instrument that could play several musical instruments at the same time, other than 9 serenities and 14 masters' unique godly weapon, the divine melody, there was no one else in the world that could do this. But wasn't the divine melody kept in the misty mansion? When did it get back in the hands of this devil? Everyone clearly knew that the 9 serenities and 14 masters without the divine melody, and the 9 serenities and 14 masters with the divine melody, were 2 completely different concepts. Chapter 1188. With the divine tune in his hands, he could unleash a unique sound wave attack that could ignore space and attack all the enemies he could see. At the same time, he could focus on attacking. He didn't even need to deliberately play. With a wave of his hand or a flick of his finger, he could unleash a sound blade attack that no one could defend against. If it wasn't for the fact that Misty Mansion had sent out all their forces to surround and intercept the 9 serenities and 14 masters, they might have ended up with nothing. The degree of terror of the 9 serenities and 14 masters far surpassed the other 9 nether young masters, apart from the 9 nether first young master. The Misty Mansion had over a dozen Saint Venerables and close to 100 Holy Emperor young masters working together to attack. There were even a few Saint Monarchs holding the line, as well as over 200 experts from the 3 Holy Lands. With such a huge lineup, they were still crushed by the 9 serenities and 14 masters. They charged left and right like there was no one stopping them. In the end, it was the 2 Saint Monarchs from Misty Mansion who had been patiently lying in ambush, launching a sneak attack at the crucial moment and snatching away the divine tune of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. That was how they managed to turn the situation around. With the divine tune in hand, the 9 nether 14th young master was truly invincible under the heavens. With the support of the divine tune, it was definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. The 9 serenities and 14 masters used their 9 nether true chi to activate the one and only 9 nether divine tune. That power was terrifying. That was the strongest expert in the world. There was no such thing as one of here. Miao Ching Ching couldn't come out and could be ignored. With the divine tune, the 9 serenities and 14 masters was the strongest. Even without the divine tune, the 9 serenities and 14 masters was still one of the strongest experts in the world. On that day, after divine melody was accidentally lost, 9 serenities and 14 masters still charged left and right, killing their way out of the encirclement like a hurricane, making their attackers pay a huge and almost unbearable price. The chase lasted for tens of thousands of miles, and there were no less than 1,000 interceptions along the way. In total, there were more than 100 life and death battles. Finally, the 9 serenities and 14 masters, who had suffered more than 100 fatal injuries, were forced into the Tian Fa forest. Then, several experts who had been lying in ambush in the 9 Nether Secret Realm took advantage of the moment when the 9 serenities and 14 masters entered the secret realm to recover. He had successfully sealed it in one go. After that, they had to arrange for the 8 Saint Venerables of Tian Fa to guard the place day and night. It was precisely because of this mission that the 8 Saint Venerables of that time were all crippled. One had to know that at that time, the 8 Saint Venerables were all at the peak of the Holy Emperor's level 4 cultivation. They were only a step away from the Saint Venerable realm. But he was tormented to such an extent by a 9 Nether 14th young master who had the hindrance of a seal. The scariest thing was that the 9 serenities and 14 masters was still heavily injured and not at full strength. Even with so many negative influences, the 9 serenities and 14 masters still had such strength. It was not hard to imagine how terrifying he was when he was at full strength. The hundreds of years of exhaustion did not only exhaust the 8 Saint Venerables, but also the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Most importantly, because of the exhaustion and the seal, the recovery of the 9 serenities and 14 masters' serious injuries was also very slow. Even when he escaped, his old injuries were still not healed. Moreover, in order to successfully break through the seal, he had lost almost 90% of his strength. But even so, even though he only had 10% of his strength left, he had still killed almost half of the 20 or so Saint Emperors surrounding him. Only then did he quietly escape. Above, it was the 9 Nether 14th young master without the divine tune. Now, with the divine melody in hand, the 9 serenities and 14 masters, who was like a tiger that had grown wings, and who was very likely to have fully recovered from his injuries, was actually evenly matched with another person. They had fought all the way here. Who was the other person? Who had such tyrannical strength? Judging from the sounds, the two seemed to have been fighting for a very long time. A long, gloomy howl suddenly cut across the sky. Although the actual distance between the source of the sound and this place was more than 100 miles, the ghostly and gloomy aura that came from the long howl still made everyone's hair stand on end. "What kind of monster are you?" This was the roar of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. That voice was actually filled with incomprehensible incredulity, as well as indescribable depression. It was as if something strange had happened, and even he could not understand it. The voice came from afar, and everyone was very curious. Who was the other person? How could he cause the domineering 9 serenities and 14 masters to ask such a question? While everyone was wondering, another strange howl resounded in the sky. The place where the sound came from was obviously much closer to the location of the Allied forces' camp. It had been 100 miles away before, but now it was only about 60 to 70 miles away. What an amazing speed! In just a few words, it had moved more than 30 miles. At this moment, the 9 serenities and 14 masters seemed to have discovered something. He suddenly cursed and shouted anxiously, "Is there anyone in front? A bunch of idiots! Hurry up and get out of the way! Don't let the thing I am chasing come into contact with anyone. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." This voice was full of urgency and extreme anger. Everyone was stunned. Why would the 9 serenities and 14 masters say that? He did not even know who was there, nor did he know the cultivation level of the people here. Why was he shouting so anxiously? Why? Only June Moxie frowned and shouted sternly, "Everyone, pay attention! Once you discover someone coming from the northeast, no matter who it is, dodge with all your might. No one is allowed to come into contact with them. No one is allowed to fight. Just run away with all your might. No one is allowed to disobey." June Moxie made a prompt decision and immediately gave the order. The Beast Kings didn't hesitate after hearing this. They immediately commanded their respective armies and roared, carrying out their orders without hesitation. Emo Wudao frowned and said, "Manor Lord June, isn't it too rash of you to give such an order just because the 9 serenities and 14 masters shouted from afar? If the strange races launch an attack at this time, and our formation is not in order, how are we going to face them?" June Moxie laughed contemptuously and said darkly, "Don't you hear the urgency and fear in the voice of the 9 serenities and 14 masters? Don't you understand what this means?" Emo Wudao was stunned. To think that even the 9 nether 14th young master has to shout so anxiously, even using such threatening words. Do you think that the 9 nether 14th young master is someone who would shout like that? June Emo Xie continued to laugh coldly. Emo Wudao's face broke out in cold sweat. He immediately realized the seriousness of the situation. The 9 nether 14th young master was someone who wouldn't even make a sound even if he was slashed by thousands of swords and blades. But now, he was yelling so urgently, even going so far as to threaten the person in the distance. Just what was it for? The answer was obvious. The reason why the 9 serenities and 14 masters shouted so is obvious. The human body is definitely very helpful to the thing that he is chasing with all his might. Then, Lord Mo, I would like to ask you, what is it that the human body is more helpful to? June Moxie snorted and asked, "Since the human body is beneficial to him, I believe it is not a good thing for the original owner of the body." You don't even realize this, and you still want to question me? What are you trying to do by delaying the time of this important matter? Even the 9 serenities and 14 masters is worried about something. Who here dares to say that they can deal with it? Or are you confident that you can deal with it, Lord Mo? June Moxie sighed and said, "It is not a bad thing for you to look at the big picture, but you should consider whether you are doing something bad with good intentions. Why are you so stubborn? Could it be that you are such a person who cannot be praised? Previously, I said that you had a point as the palace lord. Now, it seems that I, June Moxie, have made a mistake." Emo Wudao's face turned red, and he did not know how to reply for a moment. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came closer and closer to them. In the whistling sound, there seemed to be a strong sense of excitement. The 9 serenities and 14 masters' divine music was played even more urgently and tightly. It was almost no longer a melody, and only a lot of long notes could be heard. His shouts were also getting more and more urgent. From afar, they could already hear the sound of wind breaking through the air, as if he was trying his best to stop something. June Mo Xie and Gu Han looked at each other, and the two of them hurried over. Mei Shuyan looked at them worriedly, and took over June Moxie's position as the commander. She immediately gave the order to arrange people to avoid the unknown disaster. June Moxie and Gu Han were both at the level of Lord Saints, and their movement speed was extremely fast. In an instant, they were already 20 to 30 miles away, and they saw the scene of the fierce battle. When they saw the fight with their own eyes, even the two of them couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air at the same time. Before they saw the truth, they knew that the situation was very serious, but they could not imagine what they would see. Now that they saw it, they still did not know what they were seeing, because everything he saw was just too strange. The battlefield was tumbling, and the crushed stones on the ground were all turned into powder, floating in the air. behind this fierce battle, there was a long line of mud and sand that stretched for hundreds of miles, and it was slowly calming down. Without a doubt, that was the battlefield where the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters and the monster had fought all the way here. As far as the eye could see, it was a flat plain. It was hundreds of miles long, and almost tens of feet wide, but there was not a single piece of crushed stone the size of a human head. It was as if a yellow river had suddenly appeared in the middle of the sea. In the battlefield, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters waved the divine music in his hands, and released thousands of ear-piercing sound lines. Using both his hands and feet, he formed a black whirlwind in the air. Just as he started to spin, he appeared in another place. In front of him was a humanoid object. As for saying that it was a humanoid object, it was because the thing that the 9 Nether 14th young master was facing had a complete humanoid form. It had arms, legs, and a head. But this thing's head did not have any eyes, ears, mouth, or nose. It had a face, and it was just a flat plate. Chapter 1189. The monster's body exuded a faint green glow. Although it had no eyes or ears, it was agile enough to dodge the sound wave attacks from 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Not only could it resist, but it could also make sharp counterattacks. It was actually able to maintain a balance of attack and defense with 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. At least it was not being beaten up. The current battle situation was no longer the chasing thing that 9 Serenities and 14 Masters mentioned just now. Instead, 9 Serenities and 14 Masters were desperately trying to stop it. Their body movements were swift, trying their best to stop the monster from rushing towards the allied army. The monster's intention was also very obvious. It was desperately rushing towards them, wanting to come into contact with the allied army. Jun Moxie focused his eyes. Although he could not clearly see the facial expression of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who was moving at high speed, he could clearly see that 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' clothes and vest were already wet. It was clearly sweating profusely. Jun Moxie's pupils shrank suddenly, and he looked at Guhan. Both of them were overwhelmed with shock. Although this monster was at a disadvantage in terms of form and did not seem to be as strong as 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, and in terms of the battle situation, it was also attacking more and defending more. Yet, it was able to tire 9 Serenities and 14 Masters to this extent? The strength of this monster was definitely not to be underestimated. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' body movement speed became faster and faster. Suddenly, with a bang, she slapped the monster's body fiercely. With a loud bang, the monster staggered back. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters roared and flew up. Then, a series of explosions sounded like firecrackers. In the blink of an eye, the palms of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters turned into a shadow and disappeared completely. The dense clapping sounds became a long note, but no matter how famous a singer was, they would not be able to sing such a high note. Jun Moxie smacked his lips. He roughly estimated that in that instant, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had launched at least 1,000 palm strikes. Furthermore, every palm strike was executed with full force. Every palm strike landed solidly on the monster's body. The monster was continuously pushed back by the series of attacks, but the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters did not let up and continued to attack like a shadow. Just this round of attacks had pushed the two of them back a full 30 to 40 li. Bang! The monster's green body suddenly emitted a loud sound, and with a bang, it completely exploded in mid-air, completely shattered, and turned into a sky full of green splendor. It was as if countless fireflies were dancing in the air. Was it over? Was it over just like that? Jun Moxie frowned. Guhan had been frowning the whole time. Looking at the green shadow, his eyes were full of uncertainty, but there was also a strong sense of doubt. the 9 serenities and 14 masters landed on the ground with a bang and actually created a small pit in the ground. With the strength of the 9 serenities and 14 masters, walking on snow without leaving a trace, and walking on duckweed across water were all trivial matters. Even if he stepped on cotton, he might not be able to make the cotton sink in the slightest. However, at this time, he actually created a pit in the ground. It was obvious that this battle had consumed a lot of his strength, and he could no longer completely control his Xian energy. Then, he immediately straightened his body, took a deep breath, and stared at the green shadow in the air with wide eyes. His eyes were actually filled with fear and dread, and it seemed that there was also a strong sense of disbelief. "What the hell is going on?" June Moxie asked softly. The 9 serenities and 14 masters still stared at the green object in the air without turning his head, and said in a low voice, "Be careful, it's not over yet." June Moxie was startled. Not over yet? Looking carefully at the green object in the air, he thought to himself that it had already been beaten into a cloud of dust. It was already like this, was it still not dead? In the air, the strange green mist floated, but it did not rise, nor did it fall. "What is this thing, and how did you guys communicate?" June Moxie was fully alert, and stood next to the 9 serenities and 14 masters. The 9 serenities and 14 masters did not even look at June Dashao, and continued to stare at the green object in the air. He said in annoyance, "Who knows what this thing is? It's rare for me to have such a peaceful time, so I wanted to come to your war for seizing the heavens to watch the show. The collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains is a big matter, and there might not be another war for seizing the heavens in the future. I also wanted to see what those so-called strange races are like. But when I reached one of the mountains in front, I suddenly felt an extremely dangerous aura." The 9 serenities and 14 masters' eyes shone with a gloomy light, and he said, "It's been too long since anyone could make me feel danger, so I couldn't help but be curious. I went over to take a look, and unexpectedly saw a monster absorbing something from the corpses of some wild beast." Absorbing something from the corpses of the wild beasts. June Moxie furrowed his brows tightly. Could this guy be a zombie? But it didn't seem like it. Zombies also had real bodies, and once their bodies dissipated, they would be finished. Besides, the few mountains that the 9 serenities and 14 masters passed through were all volcanoes that had erupted with lava before. Even if there were wild beasts' corpses in the forest, even if they were not completely burned by the lava, they should have dried up long ago, right? So what was this monster absorbing? What could it absorb? I saw that this thing was too dirty, so I decided to get rid of it. But I didn't expect that this guy was actually unkillable. The 9 serenities and 14 masters' voice was extremely gloomy. I chased it all the way here, and I beat it up at least 7 or 8 times along the way. But every time I beat it up, it would become like this. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, it would reform again, and I would beat it up again. This cycle has already been going on for 2 days and 2 nights. The 9 serenities and 14 masters sighed speechlessly. For the past 2 days, I haven't even drunk a drop of water. I've been attacking it blindly. I've been beating it for 2 days and 2 nights, but nothing happened to it. It's still as energetic as when we first met. If this goes on, it probably won't do anything to it, but I'll definitely die of exhaustion." June Moxie's eyes almost popped out. There's actually such an outrageous thing in this world? He couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. F***CK, is this a dungeon on the computer? After killing it, it came back after a while. Outrageous? There's something even more outrageous. Just this morning, I encountered a group of damn green wolves. The 9 serenities and 14 masters cursed and said, there were only 40 or 50 of them in total. I didn't care at first, but this monster swept through the wolf pack, and then those bastard wolves suddenly fell to the ground and died. When we fought again, I realized that this monster's combat power had suddenly increased by a lot. It must be because of those green wolves. That's why I shouted for you guys to quickly dodge. June Moxie was stunned. What is this thing? How could it have such a perverted ability? No wonder the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters shouted so urgently just now. Thinking of this, June Moxie shuddered and broke out in cold sweat. If this guy was allowed to rush into the Allied camp, how many people would die in the end? And to what extent could this monster's combat power increase to? Thinking of this, June Moxie didn't dare to continue thinking about it. Disaster, a devastating disaster. If such a disaster really happened, there would be no need for the strange races to come. This monster would probably be able to destroy the Allied army. Gu Han's expression instantly became extremely ugly. With regards to Gu Han's emotions, June Moxie could understand. A great battle was about to break out, and such an unimaginable monster had actually appeared. It was really no wonder that he was in a bad mood. Fortunately, because of the sudden intervention of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, the danger of this disaster had decreased by a lot. Or perhaps the luck of the Xian continent had not ended yet, that's why it was like this. Just as everyone was talking, the green smoke suddenly began to spin violently. It spun faster and faster, until there was a whooshing sound, and finally, it formed a shadow in midair. And within that shadow, there seemed to be a faint human figure gradually forming. F***ck. It's like this every time, it's coming again. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters cursed with some grief and indignation. How can we kill this monster? Can't it attack after it's been scattered? If it can't fight back, why don't you try to completely destroy it? June Moxie asked. It's true that it can't fight back after it's scattered, but that green smoke is basically a mass of air. No matter what kind of power you use, you can't hurt it at all. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters turned around and glared fiercely at June Moxie. If it could be directly destroyed after scattering, I would have thrown half of it in the western regions, the other half to the East Seas, the other half to Blizzard Silver City, and the last half to Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I'm not stupid, why are you looking at me like that? June Moxie slapped his forehead speechlessly. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. It's useless, I've tried everything. Extreme cold and extreme heat have no effect on it. F***ck. What kind of monster is this? How can it be so domineering? June Moxie cursed. You ask me, who should I ask? I also want to know. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters rolled his eyes speechlessly. Right at this moment, a sharp whooshing sound suddenly rang out. Immediately after, the green mist in the air suddenly disappeared, and a monster that was about the height of a normal human suddenly appeared. It turned its featureless head and suddenly rushed past the 3 of them with a whoosh. Looking at its direction, it was clearly in the direction of the Allied army's camp. Whoosh. This time, the one with the fastest reaction was Gu Han. In a flash, he had blocked the monster. Without saying a word, he struck out a few heavy palms in succession. With a few bangs, the monster's movements were somewhat sluggish as it took a few steps back. Then, it seemed to become more and more agile as it flew in the air. In the next moment, it actually increased to the point where it could attack and defend against Gu Han. In addition, it had an immortal body and could devour life. The threat it posed was probably even greater than the invasion of the mutated races. The more June Moxie observed, the stranger he felt. Chapter 1190. This monster, if you said he was a human, would humans behave like this? But if you said he was not, other than the fact that he did not have facial features and could not speak, he was not much different from a human expert. I'll hold the fort. You should take a rest. June Moxie took out a large pot of water, a pot of wine, a few large pieces of fragrant meat, and a dozen steamed buns from the Hongjun Pagoda. Hurry up and eat. I might need you to take over later. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' eyes lit up. I didn't expect you to carry so many good things with you. What technique is this? In any case, it's a unique move. Don't you know who this young master is? Jun Emosia felt like he was showing off. But he did not hear 9 Serenities and 14 Masters reply. When he looked back, this guy was raising his head and gulping down the big bag of wine. Then, there was a series of gulping sounds. The water bag dried up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, without washing his hands, he grabbed a large piece of meat and took a big gulp. Jun Moxie's eyes widened. He had swallowed at least half a caddy of meat in one gulp. He had actually swallowed it after flattening it in his mouth. From the looks of it, the 14th young master was really quite tired and hungry after these 2 days and nights. He had consumed a considerable amount of energy. But when he reflected on 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' current state, not only did Jun Moxie not find it funny, but he was shocked and horrified. What kind of person was 9 Serenities and 14 Masters? To put it bluntly, even if he did not eat or drink for a year, nothing would happen to him, and he would not be in such a state. Moreover, with 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' exquisite cultivation, all the pores on his body could breathe and absorb foreign substances. As long as he had the thought of drinking water, he only needed to use his cultivation to gather enough drinking water in a very short time. Even if you buried him in the ground, as long as he wanted to drink water, he would still be able to drink the sweet spring water. He could even drink it without moving. But now, he was so thirsty and hungry. This proved that in the past 2 days and 2 nights, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had been pushing their limits every single moment. Even when they had completely destroyed their opponents, they still could not rest. They had to conserve every bit of energy and wait for the next round of attacks. Over the past 2 days and 2 nights, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had the absolute upper hand. However, against an opponent that could not be killed by any means, having the upper hand was meaningless. At most, they could only ensure that they would not be killed by the opponent. Apart from that, there was no other way. What a terrifying thing this was against such a monster. If not for the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, no one would have been able to hold on until now. They might not even be able to escape unscathed. Fortunately, it was the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters who first discovered him. At this moment, Jun Moxie was so shocked that he was speechless. A loud boom rang out, followed by Gu Han's furious roar. It was filled with rage and endless hatred. It's you. It's you. It's actually you. You're the sinner of the continent, you bastard who deserves to be hacked into pieces. I will. Jun Moxie and the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters turned to look at Gu Han at the same time. Gu Han actually knew this monster? The monster still did not make a single sound. It continued to silently deal with Gu Han's crazy attack. From time to time, it would look for an opening to break through Gu Han's obstruction and escape to the allied troops dozens of li away. However, at this moment, Gu Han seemed to have suddenly gone mad. He attacked crazily without a care for his life. He roared again and again, the veins on his face bulging. Jun Moxie could clearly see that Gu Han's eyes had turned as red as blood. Who is he? Jun Moxie asked. The moment Jun Moxie asked this, even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters immediately stopped chewing and looked at Gu Han. This is the 9 illusory quicksand. The 9 illusory quicksand that the 3 Holy Lands have accumulated for over 10,000 years. Gu Han's voice sounded like he was crying. This darned bastard. He actually used the 9 illusory quicksand to reconstruct his own body. This bastard, this bastard. What a sick bastard. It's Zhang Kuang. Jun Moxie jumped up in shock. He looked in disbelief at this extremely ugly monster that had no eyes, mouth, ears, or nose. This is actually Zhang Kuang? Zhan Luanhui? Could it be that after he escaped from the volcano, he discovered that his body was completely destroyed, and with no other choice, he used the 9 illusory quicksand to reconstruct his own body? But how is this possible? Zhan Kuang? Isn't Zhan Kuang one of the 8 personal disciples of Miao Qingqing from the Misty Mansion? The 9 serenities and 14 masters asked with half a piece of meat in his mouth. He's actually not dead yet? Without waiting for Jun Moxie's reply, he sighed and said, "No wonder he's so difficult to deal with." So it's him, no wonder. Gu Han was not the only one who was enraged. Ever since Jun Moxie and Gu Han came over, that monster had not made a single sound. Just when Gu Han saw through his true identity and was enraged, that monster also let out a strange cry at the same time. As mentioned earlier, he did not have any facial features on his head, so naturally, he did not have a mouth. No one knew where that cry came from, but in that cry, it was actually filled with indescribable rage and hatred. This monster was indeed Zhan Kuang, the Zhan Luanhui from back then, the culprit who single-handedly destroyed the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. But right now there was an indescribable rage and frustration in Zhan Kuang's heart. Although he had single-handedly destroyed Mount Heaven Saint and caused a calamity in the continent, and even caused the entire 3 Holy Lands to become the scapegoat, causing the 3 Holy Lands to hate him to the bone. But at the same time, he had also been thrown into the mouth of a volcano by the combined forces of Jun Moxie and the 3 Holy Lands. His body had been completely incinerated, and could not be used again. It was like a person who was still alive had been forcefully pushed into a crematorium's furnace. Although his spirit still existed and he could barely take on a human form, he was only a wisp of green smoke. Zhan Kuang was also filled with grief and indignation, speaking of which, Zhan Kuang had only fallen to this state because of his own sins. Unless he had no other choice, he would never have forcefully used the 9 illusory quicksand as a material to reconstruct his body. The 9 illusory quicksand was a miraculous treasure of heaven and earth, and had countless uses. But it was ultimately not a body that was born from 10 months of gestation. Compared to a normal human body, the 9 illusory quicksand had many more uses, but it would lose even more. And more importantly, he had brazenly stolen all of the 9 illusory quicksand. It could be said to be an important item that the Zhan family's ancestors had been longing for 10,000 years. The 9 illusory quicksand was an indispensable and irreplaceable item to maintain the daily operations of the Misty Mansion. As long as they had this treasure, it was equivalent to having the throat of the entire Misty Illusory Manor in their hands. With this treasure, they would have the dominant position in the Misty Illusory Manor. So this treasure was extremely important to the Zhan family. If Zhan Kuang did not place so much importance on the Zhan family, why would he have planned this series of schemes for 8,000 years? Unless he had no other choice, why would Zhan Kuang bear to use such a precious and irreplaceable item to reconstruct his own body? Everything was because time waited for no man. If he didn't use it, he could only wait for his soul to dissipate. After 10,000 years, he had finally obtained the 9 illusory quicksand with great difficulty. But he could only use it to reconstruct his own body. How could Zhan Kuang not be furious? How could he not be sullen? But even if he used the 9 illusory quicksand and managed to preserve his life, it did not mean that everything was fine. Because of the unique properties of the 9 illusory quicksand, Zhan Kuang's soul would be preserved after the fusion, but he would no longer be a person. A person without any human characteristics, without any sense of touch, taste, or any other senses, even if he had a human-like outer shell, could he still be called a person? He was just a monster. Although Zhan Kuang was a peerless expert, he was still a man at the end of the day. He still had that impulse. But after using the 9 illusory quicksand to reconstruct his new body, even if he was burned to ashes by the flames of lust in his heart, that thing down there would not move at all. And it didn't seem like there was anything down there. Something that didn't even have facial features, so how could there be something so intricate? The only thing that remained was the aftertaste of the past and the flames of lust that couldn't be vented. One could imagine a certain person feeling hungry and crazily eating a bunch of things. But then he felt that his stomach wasn't feeling well, and he just had no way of excreting it. In the end, he had no choice but to dig out his own stomach and take everything out. Any normal person who encountered such a thing, whether it was the person involved or the bystanders, they would definitely not be able to take it, right? Furthermore, the 9 illusory quicksand was almost completely transparent. You could drink a few cups of water, but you could clearly see that the water was swimming around in your body. His entire person was like a glass bottle. No, it should be said that the current Jean Luen Hui was a human-shaped glass bottle. And a rather thick glass bottle. It wouldn't shatter easily, and even if it shattered, it could recover in an extremely short period of time. So facing Gu Han's criticism, Zhang Kuang was so depressed that he was going crazy. Could it be that I want to use this damn thing? I still want to be a human. But it's all of you who have forced me to the point where I no longer have the possibility of being a human. And the most despicable thing is that all of you have forced me to even lose the right to be a man. And now you still want to express your indignation at me for using the 9 illusory quicksand? If he hadn't destroyed the pillar of heaven's mountains and plunged everything into an unprecedented calamity, then no matter what, he would be able to find a human body nearby and attach himself to it. After he left this place, he could just find a better body. However, he had stolen all of the 9 illusory quicksand, causing the pillar of heaven's mountains to collapse and countless volcanoes to erupt. Apart from a few extremely strong people from the 3 Holy Lands, it could be said to be desolate and uninhabited. And after the 3 Holy Lands had gone through this mess, they really did not have any worries at all. Bringing everyone to the battlefield. That's right, they didn't even have a home to return to, so why would they need to leave people behind to look after their home? Chapter 1191. Thus, after drifting for a few days, Zhang Kuang's soul finally couldn't take it anymore. Either his soul was completely destroyed, or he had to take the final step. This was because Zhang Kuang's foundation was too strong. If he wasn't in such a dangerous environment, with the toughness of his soul, it wouldn't be a problem for him to find a human to possess. But there were volcanoes everywhere, and the temperature was frighteningly high. Even in places where the volcanoes weren't erupting, a raw egg would be cooked in the blink of an eye. A soul could withstand all kinds of cold and negative conditions, but it couldn't withstand this kind of extreme heat, especially when there was poison in the heat, causing the soul to shrink even further. Thus, Zhang Kuang realized that there was no way he could walk out of this place. Left with no other choice, Zhang Kuang finally entered his own soul space, and took out the 9 illusory quicksand that he had spent so much effort to obtain. He used up almost all of his remaining soul energy to mold it into the shape of a human body. Then, he placed his own Yuan spirit into it. After spending another 2 days and 2 nights to fuse with it, he finally succeeded. His Yuan spirit and the 9 illusory quicksand fused into one. But the situation after the merging caused Zhang Kuang to break down. There was no way he wouldn't break down. His body could barely be considered a human, but his head was just a decoration. There was no face, no nose, no mouth, no eyes, and no ears. In short, there was nothing on his head. What the hell was this? As for the more delicate things like his internal organs, meridians, and the thing that men valued the most, they were all missing. Then was his current body still considered a body? Was he still a human? In his momentary breakdown, Zhang Kuang quickly came up with a countermeasure. Actually, there was a countermeasure that could make up for these shortcomings. These missing things were the most delicate organs in the human body, and naturally required a long period of nurturing. To regenerate these things, as long as he provided a large amount of blood essence and used some evil methods to refine them, he could still regrow them. What he lacked now was people, a large number of people. But now that the surrounding 10,000 li had turned into a purgatory, how many living beings could there be for him to absorb blood essence from? After a certain time, the 9 illusory quicksands effects would completely end, and he would have to remain in this state forever. How could the prideful Zhang Kuang endure this? Left with no other choice, Zhang Kuang had no choice but to absorb a few dried corpses. Although his body didn't have any reaction, how could he change his habits of being a human for nearly 10,000 years? Especially when it was the carcass of a wild beast that had been roasted dry by the volcanic eruption and had become smelly and moldy after a long time. Just as Zhang Kuang had made up his mind and forced himself to swallow the nausea and absorb the 2 corpses, the 9 serenities and 14 masters suddenly appeared at this crucial moment. Faced with such a scene, the 9 serenities and 14 masters were shocked. They cursed the disgusting monsters and started fighting. Zhang Kuang was feeling extremely aggrieved right now. Seeing how this fellow was trying to deal with him without even trying to differentiate between right and wrong, he was even more enraged. Without saying a single word, the 2 of them began to engage in an intense battle. Up until now, the 2 of them had been fighting for several days and nights, but they were still in a daze. Although Zhang Kuang had determined from the 9 Nether 14th Young Master's martial arts that the other party was the famous 9 Nether 14th Young Master, he had no idea why this fellow would make a move against him. Even if I look a little disgusting now, you can't just kill me like this, right? Did I offend you? F***ck, is it a crime to be ugly? Do you think I want to look like this? What was even more depressing was that if he was at his peak, his strength would definitely be higher than that of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. In fact, it would be much higher. Even though he couldn't say that he could do anything to the 9 serenities and 14 masters, he wouldn't be at a complete disadvantage. He would be able to fight whenever he wanted and leave whenever he wanted. But now, the result of the battle was that he couldn't fight back at all. Moreover, he would be beaten up every once in a while. If it wasn't for the 9 illusory quicksands' miraculous indestructibility, he would have died a long time ago. There was no need to mention this grievance. As for the 9 serenities and 14 masters, who had the upper hand, he was just as depressed. He thought that it would be a small matter, and he would be able to take care of that disgusting monster easily. Then, he would head to the war for seizing the heavens, drink some wine and hum a tune, and watch the 3 holy lands fight with the strange races. If he was in a good mood, he would intervene. According to normal thinking, what kind of combat power could a random monster have? He had killed quite a number of monsters. Who would have thought that the monster they'd met this time would be so perverse? Not only was his battle prowess high, he was actually unkillable. Towards the end, even someone as powerful as the 9 Nether 14th Young Master was starting to feel depressed and bored. After being smashed, it would reform itself. And after being reformed, it did not weaken at all. It still maintained its previous level of strength. Speaking of which, Zhang Kuang did not know that the 9 illusory quicksand had the miraculous ability to reform his body. He thought that he was done for after being beaten up the first time. Who would have thought that he would actually come back to life? After so much depression, this was the only thing that gave Zhang Kuang a little surprise and comfort. Who knew, he might really be immortal in the future. However, it was still rather uncomfortable to exist in this kind of immortal form. He had even lost the most basic part of being a man. It would be strange if he could still be at ease. In the battlefield, Gu Han's roar was like thunder. Every palm strike was like a bolt of lightning, getting faster and faster. Finally, after a series of crisp sounds, there was a loud explosion. Zhang Kuang's translucent body once again turned into a cloud of green smoke. After a round of intense battle, Gu Han's old face was covered in sweat. Old Man Gu's current strength was more than one level lower than the 9 serenities and 14 masters. If it was before Gu Han's cultivation level dropped, even if he was not as strong as the 9 serenities and 14 masters, he was not too far off. But now, he was a far cry from it. Old Man Gu, let me try. Perhaps I have a way to deal with this scourge. Jun Moxie's eyes flashed with a cold light. With a flip of his hand, a ball of black flames suddenly appeared in his palm. Flame of primal chaos. It was the flame of primal chaos that could incinerate all things. This was also the most effective method that Jun Moxie had determined to deal with the current situation. At the same time, it was also the best method that Jun Moxie had determined to destroy Zhang Kuang. At this moment, Zhang Kuang's body had scattered into a cloud of green smoke. He stood there motionless, like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. If he did not act now, when would he? Facing this monster in front of him, who could not die even after being beaten up, who could regenerate in an extremely short period of time, and whose battle prowess would not decrease at all after recovery. He was impervious to fire and water, and even swords could not harm him. Furthermore, he was a monster that could increase his strength by swallowing the flesh and blood of other living beings. Naturally, it was best to get rid of him as soon as possible. Other than the flame of primal chaos, even Jun Moxie could not think of any other way to truly kill this monster in front of him. He could only place his hopes on the flame of primal chaos that had never failed before. Would the flame of primal chaos, which had never failed before, be as invincible as it was in the past? When Gu Han saw the black flames appear in Jun Moxie's hands once again, his face changed and a look of fear appeared in his eyes. He immediately retreated to the side. Although he knew that the black flames would definitely not target him, he was still afraid that he would accidentally come in contact with it. Gu Han knew very well how terrifying this flame was. A few days ago, Jun Mo Xie had used the flames to seal the entrance of the cave. Then, the flames had slowly descended. Even the toughness and coldness of the rare essence ice had been unable to stop or extinguish the black flames. Moreover, not a single one of those 40 experts had been able to escape because of the flames. In the end, even their corpses and souls had been turned into nothingness. This time, no matter how unkillable Zhang Kuang was, he would definitely be turned into ashes by this domineering flame. Completely annihilated. Jun Moxie's body slowly floated into the air, arriving beside the green smoke in the blink of an eye. With a wave of his hand, the flame of primal chaos exploded into tiny bits and pieces, slowly falling into the smoke. Following that, he quickly retreated. The 9 serenities and 14 masters and Gu Han's eyes widened as they watched on with hope. With such a monster eyeing them like a tiger watching its prey, no one would be able to eat or sleep well. Although this monster didn't seem too difficult to deal with, as long as one had enough strength, they would be able to kill it after a while. However, the biggest problem now was that they didn't have any way to kill it. If they continued to fight like this, no matter how powerful an expert was, he would still be exhausted to death. After all, it was regenerating on the spot without any losses. The three of them watched with rapt attention. Jun Moxie's face also changed color. After a while, the three of them revealed expressions of disbelief. The 9 serenities and 14 masters had seen the flame of primal chaos before, so they naturally understood that this flame was the ultimate destructive power that could burn anything. Thus, they had great hopes that they would be able to accomplish something. But now, a look of disappointment appeared on their faces. The truth was right in front of them. In the air, the green smoke was still floating faintly, while the flame of primal chaos stayed within the green smoke and continued to burn at a steady pace. However, The green mist was completely indifferent to this. The green smoke and the flame of primal chaos were still in the air. Although the flame of primal chaos continued to burn within the green smoke, the two seemed to be in a stalemate, not interfering with each other. June Moxie's eyeballs almost popped out of their socket. What was going on? Could it be that the flame of primal chaos actually failed? The flame of primal chaos could burn everything in the world, even space and souls. So why couldn't it burn that damned green smoke today? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.